Chapter 3870. Seeing Zichen's determined gaze, Shanya and Lan Gumeng nodded before leaving. The two of them went to the final floor. Sheng Luin did not stop the two of them, allowing them to leave. He did not even say anything. Clearly, he knew that once the three of them worked together, it would be extremely troublesome, even if he possessed the cloud and rain sword. The two of them stared at each other until Shanya and Lan Gumeng completely vanished from sight. As a result, the odds in the city changed. Zichen's odds began to increase, while Sheng Luin's remained the same. The cloud and rain sword was a weapon in the top 100, while Zichen's spirit shield could only enter the top 100 after being baptized. It was clear at a glance who was stronger and who was weaker. Over the past few centuries, the cloud and rain sword's ranking had never changed. This was the best proof of its strength. In a one-on-one battle, Zichen did not even have the slightest chance of victory. How was anyone supposed to place their bets? The gambling house had increased Zichen's odds. Wasn't this clearly a scam? Zichen looked at Sheng Luin as his expression gradually turned cold. Under the uproar, Sheng Luin stowed the cloud and rain sword away and said indifferently, "Looks like you really think you've lived enough." Zichen said nothing. With a tap of his foot, he charged forward. This was a wondrous footwork from combat techniques. In other words, it was the tremor combat technique. Just when Zichen used the wondrous footwork from the tremor combat technique, Sheng Luin felt an intense sense of hostility. "Die!" He called out coldly and charged at Zichen as he lit up with sacred light. After so many years, the tremor combat technique and sacred combat technique clashed once more. There were no powerful blasts of energy. There were only constantly flickering lights and changing positions from time to time. Sacred light revolved around Sheng Luin. Every strike was filled with a sacred aura. His footwork was composed and his figure was graceful. He excelled in both offense and defense. Zichen's attacks came and went like a shadow. They also possessed powerful vibrational force, leaving behind ripples in the air wherever they passed. A clash of combat techniques did not require too much space. The two of them only needed to move around in a very small area. However, the risks involved were definitely not small. After all, practically all of the opponents that Zichen had faced so far had been defeated in a single strike. Everyone in the Sagely Mountain City was paying attention to the battle between the two. This kind of confrontation continued for 15 minutes. Everyone was shocked, but Oli shook his head and said discontentedly, "This probing time is a little too long." "You're sure this is just a test?" Wu Yid couldn't believe it. The shock waves from their clash were too strong. Even though the two of them didn't need a lot of space to fight, the shock waves from the battle still flattened the area around them. The Saint Spirit weapons on the third floor were all forced to retreat. "Die!" At this moment, a sacred sword that shone with sacred light appeared in Sheng Luin's hand. He slashed down with the sword. Zichen raised his left hand to block. A shield with the power of lightning appeared and blocked the sword. Buzz! Countless sacred lights sputtered out like a sacred rain. It was dazzling. A long staff appeared in Zichen's right hand. Countless lightning bolts surrounded the staff. He struck with the staff. Boom! The heavens and earth shook. This attack was full of power. It directly attacked Sheng Luin, who was close by. A shield of sacred light appeared in front of Sheng Luin and blocked the attack. This was combat technique. The two of them came from the same source. It was just that the way of exerting force was not the same. They separated upon contact. The two of them retreated and then charged forward again. This time they used illusionary weapons. The battle between the two of them became even louder. It was as if there were continuous explosions of lightning. However, from the looks of it, the two of them were evenly matched. The two of them who were fighting suddenly stopped. They stopped at the same time. The two of them were more than 10 feet apart. This was the best attacking distance for both of them who knew combat techniques. Your strength is not bad. However, I don't have that much time to fight with you. Let's end this." The Holy Spirit raised the sacred light, sword in his hand, and slashed down. It was as if a real light had instantly approached Zichen. Countless lightning bolts on the shield of light raised by Zichen were destroyed. At the same time, the shield of light exploded with a boom. Then, a powerful force sent Zichen flying. This was Shang Luan's true strength. At the same time, it was also the strength that the holy battle technique should have. Burst. Looking at Zichen, who was sent flying, a cold light flashed in Shang Luan's eyes. He moved forward again. It was still the same sword, but the power was stronger. Zichen raised the staff in his hand. In the next moment, the staff also exploded. Zichen was sent flying for the second time. When he stabilized his body, there was blood at the corner of his mouth. In the previous probing battle, his perception of the holy battle technique was far inferior to these 2 times. Shang Luan said proudly, "The tremor battle technique is just a small trick. How can it be compared to my holy battle technique? Back then, you lost and left with your tails between your legs. This time, the outcome will be the same. Even the next time, and the time after that will be the same. The tremor battle technique will never be qualified to be compared to the holy battle technique." Holy light burst out from his body again. A terrifying and sacred aura surged out. Shang Luan did not use his soul weapon. Therefore, Zichen did not take out his staff and spiritual shield. This was a battle of combat techniques. This time, he wanted to prove the tremor battle technique. Shang Luan, who had fully erupted, became even faster. Like a bolt of lightning, he approached Zichen in an instant. In the next moment, Zichen's staff and Dun Li exploded. He coughed up blood and was sent flying. The gap between them was obvious. The battle seemed to have been decided. Cheers broke out in the city. Nothing unexpected happened. The holy battle technique was still as powerful as before. This time, they really made a fortune. On the Holy Soul Mountain, Sheng Rao saw this scene and could not help but shake his head. He said disappointedly, "Oli, I thought you must have found a great existence. I didn't expect him to be so useless. You are too disappointing. But thinking about it, you are a failure. Of course, your vision is not good." At this time, Zichen was beaten back again. He coughed up blood again. Defeat was a foregone conclusion. Wu Yid looked at the scene of Zichen's defeat in the sky, and then at Oli, who was staring at the sky. He opened his mouth, but did not say anything in the end. Maybe the tremor battle technique was really not as good as the holy battle technique, because the power of the two was not the same. In terms of battle, the holy battle technique was more destructive. Shishan's younger brother let out a sigh. They had earned a lot after coming to the holy mountain city, but if Zichen was defeated this time, they would have nothing in the end. But the only thing that made them feel lucky was that at least their lives were saved. They would not have to work for someone else after losing everything. "What are you sighing for? Lord didn't lose," Shishan's older brother said unhappily. "Lord Zichen is coughing up blood. How can this not be?" Before the last word could be said, exclamations came from all around. Chapter 3871. Zichen had actually dodged Shang Luan's attack. Even though the energy shield was still broken, it still surprised many people. Shang Luan didn't seem to care at all. He said, sarcastically, "I forgot that you people from the tremor technique are also good at escaping. But since I'm here today, I'd like to see how many times you can escape and where you can run to." Zichen said indifferently, "Show me what you've got." Ripples surged on the surface of his body. He had already maximized the power of the tremor technique. Shang Luan moved forward again. The explosive power of the holy technique made him as fast as a beam of light, carrying his sword with him. The shield and staff appeared in front of Zichen again. With a loud boom, the shield and staff were broken again. Zi Chen retreated again. This time, Sheng Luan's explosive power caused him a certain amount of damage again. To be on par with the tremor technique, the holy technique was indeed a powerful technique. Zi Chen ignored the blood at the corner of his mouth and continued to retreat. Sheng Luan moved forward again. Zi Chen retreated. He retreated again and again. He was retreating again and again. The city was filled with cheers. Many people wanted to see Zi Chen lose. Shi Shan's brother and the others were extremely pale. Even Shi Shan's brother, who was full of confidence in Zi Chen, had a look of worry in his eyes. Oli, on the other hand, was no longer so nervous. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. Wu Yud was a little surprised. He asked, "Young master, aren't you worried that Zi Chen will lose?" Oli smiled. This was the first time he smiled since Zi Chen met Sheng Luan. Lose? How is that possible? The tremor technique has never lost to the holy technique. Wu Yud's expression became strange. One had to know that the stakes in the battle that year were extremely high. It was because of the young master's loss that the Sacred Mountain Casino changed owners. Oli knew that Wu Yud didn't believe him, but he didn't care. He continued, "Now look at Zi Chen and see if his expression changes." Wu Yud looked at Zi Chen on the screen again. However, Zi Chen kept retreating and seemed to have no strength left to fight. However, since Wu Yud was able to become the youngest manager of the Sacred Mountain gambling house, he naturally wasn't an ordinary person. He quickly discovered the difference in Zi Chen. His eyes are still calm. Calm eyes often represent calmness. He has not lost his mind yet. He is like a cheetah that has been observing its prey and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Wu Yud said in a low voice. This was the conclusion he had drawn from Zi Chen's expression. Oli smiled and said, "This kid's perception is really not bad. It seems that the troubles he encountered along the way really had a tempering effect on him. With this gaze, it proves that he has already grasped the essence of the tremor battle technique. It won't be a problem for him to completely crush the Saint battle technique." Wu Yud was naturally skeptical. If the Saint battle technique could be defeated so easily, then the young master wouldn't have been defeated back then. But looking at the young master's expression now, he was very relaxed and confident. Could it be that there was some secret behind what had happened back then? Seeing Zi Chen retreat again and again, Sheng Luan said with a mocking expression, "So this is your tremor battle technique? How can it be compared to my Saint battle technique? I think you should make the tremor battle technique disappear as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will tarnish the reputation of our Saint battle technique." Zi Chen stood 10 feet away. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "All right, the test is over. Let's decide the winner." Unsurprisingly, his words caused Sheng Luan to laugh mockingly. It also caused boos in the city. Only Big Brother Shi Shan's eyes lit up as if he had seen hope. "Test? What big words! You're about to die, and you still dare to talk to me about testing?" Sheng Luan sneered disdainfully. Zi Chen didn't reply. There was no point in a meaningless war of words. He assumed a battle stance. The Saint battle technique was indeed powerful, but the tremor battle technique was also extraordinary. "You're courting death." Sheng Luan took Zi Chen's action as a provocation, so he rushed forward and launched another powerful attack. This time, Zi Chen didn't use his shield. Instead, he stood in place and watched Sheng Luan charge forward. After experiencing it many times, he already knew where the power of the Saint battle technique came from. The explosive power of the Saint battle technique was only used on things it came into contact with. If it couldn't come into contact with something, then the explosive power would be useless. As Sheng Luan approached, the vibration power around Zi Chen began to circulate rapidly, forming countless ripples that appeared around him and under his feet. A powerful aura rushed toward him like a huge wave, lifting the corners of Zi Chen's clothes and hair. Sheng Luan approached and slashed down with his sword. Li held his breath. Whether Zi-Chin could turn the tables depended on whether he could seize this opportunity. More ripples appeared under Zi-Chen's feet. These ripples seemed to form some kind of resonance with the incoming shockwave. At the moment when the long sword was about to land, it caused his body to change direction. From the looks of it, Zi-Chen had easily dodged Xing Luan's sword with just a slight movement and a flash. This is the power of vibration. He has indeed comprehended it. Li, who was nervous, shouted excitedly. Under the vibration of the ripples, Zi-Chen came to Xing Luan's side and gently struck out with his palm. Countless ripples flowed out from his palm. Xing Luan stood there, his body not swaying at all. It was as if this attack didn't hurt him at all. He immediately held his sword and slashed horizontally, leaving a sword mark on the side. Zi-Chen's body had already disappeared. He appeared on the other side of Xing Luan and struck out with his palm again. Just like before, it seemed as if there wasn't any power behind it. Then his body disappeared again. Xing Luan's sword arrived once again, but it still didn't hit Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen appeared at Xing Luan's side for the third time and launched another light attack. It seemed as if Xing Luan was chasing after Zi-Chen with his sword. Zi-Chen obviously had a good chance, but he couldn't effectively deal a fatal blow to Xing Luan. Zi-Chen's body moved again and again. Every time he struck out, he was powerless. Even so, Zi-Chen's face turned pale at an extremely fast speed. It was as if he had used some kind of powerful technique that had consumed too much of his strength. No one knew the reason for this. Only Oli knew. At this moment, in addition to being excited, he was more shocked because Zi-Chen had already struck 6 times. The 6 strikes didn't seem to have much power, but each strike contained an infinite power of vibration. Moreover, this power had to be hidden and couldn't be released immediately. The difficulty of this was extremely high. Moreover, as the number of strikes increased, the difficulty would increase. Of course, the power would also increase. A total of 8 strikes. Zi-Chen's aura became very weak, and his speed was greatly reduced. The sword light arrived and slashed across Zi-Chen's chest, tearing his black robe. He took the opportunity to retreat, his face as pale as paper. However, his eyes were extremely bright and he looked excited. This was because his vibration battle technique had reached a new height. He had mastered the power of vibration. Humph! Let's see how long you can last. Xing Luan held his long sword and pointed it at Zi-Chen indifferently. At this moment he had been attacked 8 times, but he was unharmed. However, Zi-Chen only said one word. Vibration. Chapter 38:72. The holy light surrounding Xing Luan was suddenly extinguished, and in its place were ripples that surged out from his body. It was Zi-Chen's tremor force, which had completely erupted in Xing Luan's body. Xing Luan's body fell to the ground, blood spurting out of his mouth. Countless people in the city were in an uproar when they saw this scene. Xing Luan clearly had the upper hand just now, so why was he suddenly defeated? This is the power of the tremor technique. Li was in an extremely good mood and laughed heartily. Wu Yid, on the other hand, was very surprised. He didn't know much about combat arts, so he felt that Zi-Chen was really amazing to be able to turn the situation around. Amazing! Shishan's younger brother waved his fist vigorously. He was extremely excited. The people he brought with him also had excited expressions on their faces. Compared to the excited crowd, the surrounding people had a dejected look on their faces. Many of them even began to curse. Impossible! This is impossible! On the Saint Soul Mountain, Shen Luo looked at the scene in disbelief. He couldn't accept this fact. Mirror Spirit didn't say anything. On the Saint Beast Mountain and the Saint Talisman Mountain, the 2 mountain lords also watched silently. Zi-Chen looked at Xing Luan in front of him and said indifferently, "You lost!" Xing Luan looked up. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of resentment. He roared, "I didn't lose." Zi-Chen said, You lost, so the holy technique lost. Don't be so arrogant in front of others in the future. Your holy technique is nothing in my eyes. Zi-Chen's voice spread throughout the entire Sagely Mountain City. Countless people heard this news. This meant that the tremor technique had won this battle. He had avenged his humiliation. For a moment, many old people felt emotional and recalled the scene from back then. Back then, the tremor technique had failed and he had to leave in a sorry state. I said I didn't lose. Xing Luan stood up again. He took out a pill and swallowed it. His injuries were visibly healing. I'm still alive. I haven't lost this battle. The pill was very magical. Xing Luan's injuries were mostly healed, and he had a sword in his hand. It was the Cloud Rain Sword. Clouds and mist swirled around the sword as waves of sharp sword intent were released. The people who were cursing Xing Luan in the city began to cheer when they saw the scene. Only now did they remember Xing Luan's strongest move. The tremor battle technique competition had nothing to do with the huge bet that they had placed. As long as Saint Luan won in the end, they would be able to win the reward. Die. Xing Luan advanced with his sword. This time, he used the Cloud and Rain Sword. He had used this sword to suppress Shanya and Lan Gumeng earlier. A spirit shield appeared in front of Zi-Chen. This was Yu Yi's companion's spirit shield. When Xing Luan saw this, his expression couldn't help but change slightly. When the sword struck the spiritual shield, a powerful aura surged out. Zi-Chen's spiritual shield managed to block the Cloud Rain Sword's attack, but he was knocked back almost 300 meters. Above the spirit shield, the radiance was flickering, and the spiritual light was flickering. Its defense was still powerful, but it was no longer as powerful as when it was in Yu Yi's hands. After all, it was Yu Yi's companion's spirit shield. Xing Luan's eyes were sharp, so he obviously saw this as well. As a result, he snorted coldly. I'd like to see how many more of my attacks your crappy shield can block. A sword of light appeared in Xing Luan's left hand. Afterwards, the sword of light fused with the Cloud Rain Sword. There was this move in the tremor battle technique as well. By fusing with the weapon, it would become even more powerful. However, when Xing Luan used this move, the Cloud Rain Sword in his hand shone with light that was as dazzling as the sun. Sensing the powerful sword intent up ahead, Zi-Chen dared not be careless either. He conjured a shield of light as well and fused it with the spirit shield. A boom rang out in the sky as a powerful aura spread out. Zi-Chen was knocked back over 300 meters again. The light on the surface of the spirit shield had already dimmed, flickering from time to time. Clearly, if this continued, Zi-Chen's unbaptized spirit shield would only be able to last a few more strikes before being completely destroyed. Xing Luan sneered. Looks like you're still going to die in the end. Zi-Chen said indifferently, so what? In a clash of battle techniques, I'm the victor. Xing Luan said, today we're only going to fight to the death, not the victor. Only when I die will you have the right to say that you've won. In front of Zi-Chen, light flickered as he put away the spirit shield. In the next moment, a black staff appeared in his hand. This was a weapon he had obtained from killing a mortal soul expert. He had never thought that it would be a saint soul weapon. As Zi-Chen's cultivation increased, he discovered that the might of this saint soul weapon exceeded his imagination. Furthermore, he had never been able to unleash the true might of this saint soul weapon. Right now, the spirit shield's defense was clearly insufficient, so Zi-Chen took it out again. He looked at the spirit shield and said, although this is the 100 weapons Cloud Rain Sword, I don't think you're any weaker than it. Whoa. The spirit within the staff seemed to have heard Zi-Chen's words. The staff actually trembled on its own accord, and a portion of the patterns on its surface lit up. Zi-Chen's eyes lit up. Could this weapon really be comparable to the Cloud Rain Sword? At this moment, a sharp sword intent appeared once again. Shang Luin slashed forward with the cloud rain sword in his hand. Zichen held the long black staff in his hand and moved forward. With a shocking boom, powerful energy surged out in all directions. Under the layers of ripples, Zichen did not take a single step back. He had actually managed to block the attack. The city was in an uproar. Even Yu Yi's soul shield could not block the cloudy rain sword's attack. So how could an insignificant black stick block the cloudy rain sword? In front of Zichen, the power of tremors surged once again. A black staff appeared in his left hand. In the next moment, the two staffs fused together. On the black staff in Zichen's hand, the inscriptions lit up one by one. Almost half of the staff was lit up. Zichen's lightning-type soul power continued to pour into the staff. More than half of the patterns had lit up. The staff trembled once again, and a bestial roar seemed to ring out from it. Zichen swung the staff down, leaving behind a clear staff shadow in the air. Sensing the power of this attack, Shang Luin's face could not help but change. He activated the cloud rain sword in his hand once again. Boom! The two weapons clashed, erupting with a violent boom. Shang Luin only felt a violent aura surge towards him, forcing him back. If he had not gripped the cloud rain sword tightly in his hand, it probably would have slipped out of his hand. He was constantly pushed back, while Zichen stood in the violent energy. The patterns on the staff in his hand flickered. How is this possible? Shang Luin cried out when he saw this. He had the cloud rain sword, but he was actually pushed back. Cloud rain domain! In the next moment, he roared out. The cloud rain sword in his hand immediately released countless rays of light. Under the envelopment of the light, the world lost its color. The clouds churned and raindrops fell from the sky like beans. Heaven and earth immediately became gray and hazy. At the same time, the entire sacred armament mountain began to shake once again. All the sacred soul weapons on the mountain charged towards the direction of the cloud rain sword, showing signs of submission. Once the cloud rain domain appeared, who could contend against it? Just as countless people lamented that the battle was about to end, a purple gold light suddenly soared into the sky and tore apart the cloud rain domain. Chapter 3873. This battle had attracted the attention of the entire world. This was because the 100 soldiers had appeared. The cloud rain sword was extremely famous, and everyone knew about the domain of clouds and rain. Shang Luin had clearly held back in the previous battles, not using the domain of clouds and rain. Even so, he still managed to suppress the powerful Shanya and Lan Gumeng. This time, Shang Luin directly used the domain of clouds and rain. Many people believed that the battle was about to end. In the city, many of the people who had cursed Shang Luin earlier had already begun to celebrate in advance, being able to obtain victory and earn a fortune. They naturally would not be stingy with their praise. Many old people were also telling their juniors some of the history and past of the Cloud Rain Sword. Unexpectedly at this moment, a purplish gold light broke through the domain of clouds and rain and soared into the sky. It was like a purplish gold pillar that held up the heavens. The Saint Armament Mountain was still shaking as countless Saint Soul weapons submitted. When they saw the purplish gold figure, many people's expressions changed. A light flashed in Jingling's eyes as a faint smile appeared on her face. It really is you. The lords of the 4 mountains were slightly stunned as well. Then they sank into their thoughts. The city was in an uproar. No one knew what had happened. After a long while, an old voice rang out. Rumor has it that several hundred years ago, a mysterious weapon came to challenge the Cloud Rain Sword. However, it did not succeed. As for that weapon, the light it gave off seemed to be purplish gold. With this news, an uproar broke out once more. Had the weapon from back then returned? Was it on Zichen? Within the domain of clouds and rain, Zichen looked at the black staff in his hand and could not help but be stunned. Just a moment ago, it seemed to contain boundless fury. Nearly 2/3 of the runes on its surface had already lit up, causing the black staff to turn purplish gold as it pierced through the domain of clouds and rain in one fell swoop. However, the price was not small. It had drained a great deal of Zi-Chen's strength. Right now, the purplish gold light flickered and did not disperse for a long time. Zi-Chen raised his head to look at the sky and then at his surroundings. Countless clouds and rain gathered, but they did not dare to advance at all. Furthermore, the emotions emitted from the staff were extremely agitated. Just like Zi-Chen and Shang Luin, they were lifelong rivals. Slightly stunned, Zi-Chen did not manage to seize the opportunity to leave. The purple gold staff image above his head was rapidly shrinking and was finally covered by the domain of clouds and rain once more. The thick fog in the surroundings converged once again, and the rain of light that appeared within it carried a heavy feeling. However, Zi-Chen wasn't upset at all. After knowing how extraordinary his staff was, he was confident that he could defeat Shang Luin here. The clouds rolled, and the raindrops were like a rain of arrows whistling towards Zi-Chen. The spirit shield reappeared in front of Zi-Chen. He raised his shield towards the sky. Countless rays of light bloomed, and a curtain of light descended, protecting Zi-Chen within. The rain of arrows caused countless ripples in the defense. Zi-Chen stood in the light screen and stared straight ahead. His mind was extremely focused. The clouds and mist in front of his eyes were a special kind of energy that blocked Zi-Chen's vision and soul power perception. This was also why the staff had forcefully borrowed power to tear apart this space. It was hinting to Zi-Chen to put the battle outside, because in this domain of clouds and rain, both Zi-Chen and it were at a disadvantage. But Zi-Chen didn't care. Or rather, after knowing how extraordinary the staff was, he decided to defeat it here. The staff was trembling slightly, and the patterns on it were also flickering, as if they were transmitting some kind of message. Zi-Chen said in a low voice, "I don't know what grudges you have with that sword, but what I want to say is that you are extraordinary, so we don't need to fear you at all. If we want to win, we have to win fair and square. We'll completely defeat them right here, right in this domain of clouds and rain." As if it understood Zi-Chen's words, the staff no longer trembled, and the light on its surface became even brighter. At this moment, a sword light broke through the clouds and appeared behind Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen didn't move, allowing the sword to approach. The clouds and mist were shaken away, and the sword was blocked by the spirit shield. The light on the surface of the spirit shield was changing, and the protection it formed was also distorting. The sword of clouds and rain disappeared. It was like a venomous snake in the dark, retreating after a single attack, not giving its opponent any time to counterattack. At this moment in the city, seeing the purple gold staff disappear and the domain of clouds and rain heal, everyone who had bet on St. Luin heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the domain of clouds and rain still existed, the sword of clouds and rain would be the strongest. Due to the fact that it was a sacred soul weapon from the sacred weapon mountain, it naturally possessed an absolute home ground advantage in this battle. It should be the weapon that was defeated back then. I didn't expect it to return again. No wonder it didn't care about the first and second levels baptisms. It seems like the strange phenomenon that appeared in Saint Weapon Mountain when Zi-Chen fought you on Saint Beast Mountain might not have been caused by the companion's spirit shield. Maybe it was because those Saint Soul weapons sensed the return of the challenger, which caused the strange phenomenon. Outside the gambling house, an old man of unknown age shook his head and sighed. However, it was too impatient. It shouldn't have challenged the sword of clouds and rain right away. Its whereabouts are unknown over the years, but the sword of clouds and rain has always been nurtured in Saint Weapon Mountain. Only today did it recognize a new master. It's clear who's stronger and who's weaker. Many of the spectators in the surroundings nodded in agreement. The purple gold staff was like a flash in the pan. Now that the domain of clouds and rain had regained control, they obviously believed that Saint Luan would be the final victor. This time, they had made a huge profit. It was already set in stone. Although Shishan's younger brother was worried this time, he did not say anything. There had been too many twists and turns. Anything could happen until the very last moment. No one could see what was happening on the battlefield. They could only slowly wait based on their own guesses. At this moment, the battle in the clouds was abnormally dangerous. Zi Chen's light of spirit shield had already been attacked several times. Even if it was of extraordinary quality, it would not be able to hold on much longer. Zi Chen held the staff in his right hand. He still had not made a move. That was because he still had not grasped Saint Luan's position. However, he had already begun to accumulate power. The patterns on the staff in his hand lit up one by one. Within the light, apart from the roaming lightning, there are also streaks of purple-gold light from time to time. The sword light arrived once again, carrying the power of the clouds and mist in the region. It was abnormally powerful and terrifying. With a bang, the light of Spirit Shield was broken. The light on the light of Spirit Shield instantly dimmed. The light of Spirit Shield had suffered quite a bit of damage. Zi Chen put it away. If he continued to use it, the losses would outweigh the gains. This time his entire body was no longer protected. He was exposed to the domain of clouds and rain. Seeing this scene from the shadows, Saint Luan launched a new attack without hesitation. Sensing the changes in the airflow and the surrounding mist, Zi Chen closed his eyes. The sword light appeared beside him. Like a viper attacking, it instantly closed in. The moment he sensed the sharp sword intent, Zi Chen borrowed the power of tremors to turn around and face the sword chi. With a piu, the sword chi had already pierced through Zi Chen's chest before the sword light arrived. Blood spurted out. Zi Chen opened his eyes. His eyes were cold and merciless. They were filled with a strong killing intent. The sword light quickly retreated and disappeared into the clouds and mist once again. In the domain of clouds and rain, Saint Luan had the advantage. Naturally, he did not want to fight Zi Chen head-on. At this moment, Zi Chen, who had opened his eyes, made a move. More than 2/3 of the patterns on the black staff in his hand lit up. The entire staff also turned purple gold. The staff began to tremble. He moved the staff forward. The staff rose and fell. A clear purple gold staff shadow appeared between heaven and earth. Like a blade that could split the sky, it directly divided the entire space into two. One staff strike to break the domain. At the end of this space was where Saint Luan was. As he retreated, he widened his eyes as he watched the staff shadow approach and fall on his head. There was a loud bang. On the ground, there was an additional crack that was thousands of feet long. Chapter 3874. The crack extended for tens of thousands of feet, and countless purple gold light shone out from within. Zi Chen, whose chest was bleeding, stood in the air. The long staff in his hand that was emitting purple gold light dimmed again. It turned back into an ordinary black staff that looked very inconspicuous. And in front of him, hundreds of feet away, Shang Luan stood in the air above the crack, motionless. In his hand, the cloud rain sword had been pushed into the crack. The entire city fell into silence. No one understood what had happened. Had Shang Luan won? Or had Zi Chen won? Some people saw that Shang Luan had lost his weapon and felt that something was wrong, but they still had hope in their hearts. They hoped for Shang Luan's victory, or rather, they longed for Shang Luan's victory. In the air, Zi Chen coughed up blood, and his body began to fall. He knelt on one knee on the ground, and the extraordinary staff fell to the side. In the quiet city, cheers sounded, because Shang Luan was still standing in the air. Zi Chen coughed up another mouthful of blood, and then slowly stood up. The cheers in the city stopped abruptly, and the entire city became quiet again. "You lost," Zi Chen said, his voice calm and indifferent. "Impossible." Xinluan finally spoke, just when everyone thought that he hadn't fallen yet and that there was still hope for him to win. They saw blood continuously flowing out from his forehead. His body fell from the sky and fell into the huge crack. His last breath of life dissipated as he uttered those words. Xinluan was dead. Zichen was still alive. The outcome of this battle had been decided. Without any suspense, the city was filled with wails. "This is impossible." A furious voice came from the Saint Soul Mountain. It came from Saint Ray, but no one heard it. Oli stood there without saying a word, but the smile on his face could not be concealed. At the same time, he felt very proud, because he had chosen the right person. Zichen had finally righted the name of the tremor fighting technique. Young master has a good eye. Wu Yud could only sigh. This battle had been full of twists and turns, and he did not expect Zichen to win in the end. Even the Cloud Rain Sword, who ranked in the top 100, had been defeated. On the 3rd level of Mount Saint Weapon, Zichen walked forward and came to the edge of the crack. He lowered his head and looked down. He only saw Xinluan's corpse. The 100 soldiers, Sword of Cloud and Rain, had disappeared. He had no idea where it went. He then looked in another direction, where an exotic beast flashed and fled to the distance. It should be Xinluan's pet. Zichen didn't let the ghost chase after them. The battle was over, and he was ready to enter the next level. Right at that moment, countless rays of light came from all directions. Those were sharp auras that came from all the Saint's soul weapons on the 3rd floor of the Saint Weapon Mountain. At the same time, they each emitted a ray of light. These rays of light gathered together, as dense as raindrops. The aura was powerful, but there was no killing intent. Zichen was puzzled. His expression became solemn. The black staff left Zichen's hand and flew into the sky. All of the light was being absorbed by the black staff. In the next moment, all the Saint Soul weapons on this level, as well as the other 2 levels, bowed in the direction of the black staff, worshipping and submitting. The power of the Saint Soul weapons in the world seemed to be summoned. They flew toward the black staff in the sky. A huge devouring vortex appeared around the black staff. The spiritual baptism pool, which had not been used before, turned into rays of light of energy, leaving ribbons in the world. They arrived in front of the black staff and were absorbed by it. The Saint Weapon Mountain also started to shake, releasing an ancient and powerful aura, announcing the birth of a new 100 soldiers. Yes, after defeating the Cloud Rain Sword, Zichen's black staff was recognized and replaced the Cloud Rain Sword's position. Even though it was the weakest weapon, it still attracted a phenomenon from the Saint Weapon Mountain. This phenomenon lasted for 15 minutes. When all the energy disappeared, the black staff fell from the sky and landed in Zichen's hand. The light that flickered on its surface and the inscriptions were extinguished once again, returning to its simple appearance from before. It did not seem to have changed much. However, Zichen knew that it was no longer the same. It had gained the recognition of the Saint Weapon Mountain and absorbed the power of so many Saint Soul weapons. If it faced the Cloud Rain Sword again, it would achieve victory even more easily. And Zichen believed that the Cloud Rain Sword would not dare to appear again after this battle. Mirror Spirit looked away and murmured, "I saw your potential last time, but it's very unfortunate that the person who used you was too weak. This time you sure have a good eye. You've met a master who's worthy of you." A staff that could challenge the Cloud Rain Sword was very powerful on its own, even if its master was very weak. In the eyes of the world, it was definitely a great weapon. However, it was a pity that after the death of that generation's master, its subsequent masters were unable to meet its requirements. Even if they obtained the black staff, they were unable to unleash its original power. At best, they could only treat it as a sturdy soul weapon. Of course, those masters would never know that the black staff had never truly acknowledged them as its master. After the battle ended, there was no longer any meaning for Zichen to remain on this floor. He headed to the next floor. Everything went smoothly. Seeing Zichen successfully reach the fourth floor, the Shishan brothers could no longer hold back and cheered loudly. They had profited again this time. Their cheers were a stark contrast to the wails and curses in the surroundings. From time to time, people would cast envious and jealous gazes at the two brothers. After arriving at the fourth floor, Zichen first saw a baptism pool. It did not look large, but the spiritual energy rippling within was very abundant. There was nothing in the spiritual pool, but there were two people standing beside the spiritual pool, Lan Gumeng and Shanya. When the two of them entered the fourth floor, they did not immediately baptize their weapons. Instead, they waited here. This was because they believed that Zichen would definitely win, so they deliberately waited here. Of course, if Zichen did not win, then the two of them would join forces here to kill Sheng Luin, no matter the price. This was the plan of the two of them. After seeing Zichen, the two of them immediately came forward, very happy. Zichen opened his arms and hugged the two girls under countless envious and jealous gazes. In an instant, countless people gnashed their teeth at Zichen, wishing they could replace him. "Why are you still here?" Zichen asked. "We were waiting for you to leave together." Lan Gumeng said, "We knew you would definitely come up." Shanya said, "You should hurry up and heal your injuries first." In the previous battle, Zichen had also suffered heavy injuries. At this moment, his chest was still bleeding. The reason why he immediately came to the fourth floor was obviously because he was worried that the others on the third floor would fish in troubled waters. However, now that he saw the two of them, he was relieved. After 4 hours, Zichen's injuries were almost healed. He stood up and looked at the biggest opportunity in front of him. Next, it was time to reap the rewards. The staff and shield flew out, flying forward. Chapter 38-75. Shanya's weapon was condensed from an entire piece of miracle stone. It was already an extraordinary weapon. As for Lan Gumeng's sword, it was originally thought to be a very ordinary soul weapon from the Lan family. Who would have thought that this weapon could continue to grow? After coming here, it had been baptized time and time again, and its grade became higher and higher. Zichen's weapon was needless to say. The spirit shield originally had the potential to become 100 soldier, and the black staff had already become 100 soldier. At this moment, the 4 weapons floated above the baptismal pool, constantly absorbing the spiritual energy below. The spiritual energy was pure and heavy. Even 100 soldier would want to obtain the opportunity here. After so many years, very few people had obtained the opportunity here. At this moment, the 4 Saint Soul weapons, regardless of whether they were 100 soldier or other weapons, were frantically absorbing the energy, striving to strengthen themselves. At this moment, the 100 pillars of light, standing tall at the peak of Saint Weapon Mountain, suddenly underwent a change. Some of the pillars of light dimmed and then disappeared. Among them, each pillar of light represented 100 soldier. Previously, when the cloud rain sword disappeared, the pillars of light had already changed once. This time there were dozens of pillars of light that changed. This proved that the Saint Soul weapon ranking this time would undergo a significant change. The companion's spirit shield that had been damaged earlier now released a light that became even brighter and more dazzling. At the same time, a powerful aura was released. Next was Lan Gumeng's weapon. It was a sword. At this moment, the sword's body became even more transparent, as if it was made of jade. It radiated light in all directions. Zichen's staff also released a purple gold color. This was its original color. The one that changed the most was Shanya's weapon. The weapon that originally gave off a strange feeling also lost its camouflage after absorbing the energy, revealing its original appearance. Resplendent, multicolored light blossomed, filling everyone's vision. This made everyone feel extremely shocked. In the next moment, someone recognized the essence of Shanya's weapon. They were all in disbelief. It's a miracle stone. Heavens, no wonder it could destroy Shan Luan's weapon. It's actually a miracle stone. A small piece of miracle stone can be called a supreme treasure. I didn't expect that Shanya would have such a big piece on him. Using a complete miracle stone as a soul weapon. How extravagant! For a moment, cries of surprise could be heard everywhere. Even many of the older generation exclaimed in amazement. Their burning gazes were fixed on Shanya's weapon in the video. Even the ever-changing rankings at the peak of Saint Weapon Mountain were no longer that attractive. It was unknown if it was because the Sacred Weapon Mountain was worried that something bad would happen. But when the various lights disappeared, the Sacred Weapon Mountain blocked the latest rankings. At the same time, they informed the public that the rankings would only be announced after the end of the examination. The fortuitous encounter on the 4th floor seemed to be inexhaustible. The 4 Holy Spirit weapons continued to absorb the fortuitous encounter without the slightest intention of stopping. The dense spiritual energy in the pool also did not disperse for a long time. On the Saint Weapon Mountain, who knew how many old people felt their hearts ache? This was because the fortuitous opportunities on the 4th level were different from those on the other 3 levels. They were limited in number and were first come, first served. The amount of fortuitous encounters here was very important. As long as you could withstand the amount, you could absorb as much as you wanted. It was just like the Cloud Rain sword in the past. After coming to the 4th floor once, it had also absorbed the spiritual water here before advancing to the top of the 100 soldiers. However, the Cloud Rain sword had not absorbed a lot of spiritual water back then, so it had reached its limit. In the following years, the Cloud Rain sword nurtured itself on the Saint Weapon Mountain. Its potential increased by quite a bit, so it could withstand even more. Unfortunately, it never had the chance to reach the 4th floor. This time, it had a chance of reaching the 4th floor with Shang Luan's help. It never expected to encounter the mysterious weapon that had challenged it in the past, resulting in its defeat. Actually, in the eyes of the old people, they obviously hoped that the fortuitous encounter this time would be given to the Cloud Rain sword. After all, it had stayed here for long enough. It was truly one of them. On the Saint Weapon Mountain, a short old man saw the 4 weapons that still did not end after a long time. He immediately ran to the peak of the mountain. Aside from the 100 soldiers, there was also the Saint Weapon Mountain's Mountain Master. At this moment, the Mountain Master was standing at the peak of the mountain. With such a huge matter happening, the powerful existences of the 4 mountains had long been alarmed. Many people who had been in closed-door cultivation for many years came out one after another to see the grand scene before them. The short old man arrived at the peak of the mountain and looked at the Mountain Master. He said excitedly, "Mountain Master, if we do not stop them, the many years of accumulations of our Saint Weapon Mountain will be used up." Using up everything was naturally an exaggeration. The accumulations that the Saint Weapon Mountain had accumulated over the years were extremely robust. As for the elders overseeing the Saint Weapon Mountain, they could take away a portion of it every 50 years. However, based on the speed at which the 4 soul weapons were absorbing, they would not be able to harvest anything in the next 50 years. In fact, they would not be able to harvest anything in the next 50 years. The Mountain Master looked at the scene happening on the 4th floor and said indifferently, "This test belongs to the will of the Holy Mountains. How can we stop it?" The short old man was stunned. Only then did he remember that all the tests were not under their control. The 4 holy mountains had their own wills. Once they carried out the wills of the holy mountains, even the Mountain Master could not go against them. However, the short old man was clearly unwilling to give up on their contributions. He said, "Why don't we go find the Mirror Spirit?" In the holy mountains, everyone knew that as long as they paid a sufficient price, there was nothing that could not be negotiated with the Mirror Spirit. Furthermore, the Mirror Spirit was the only existence that could communicate with the wills of the 4 mountains and change their minds. For example, Shang Luan had obtained the Cloud Rain sword this time. Although it did not seem to follow the rules, as long as the mirror spirit agreed, everything was reasonable. The mountain master's gaze moved away from the fourth floor. Then he looked at the changing 100 soldiers and said, "It has been many years since I saw such a scene. I originally thought that the Saint weapon rankings had already been formed and that they were already the strongest Saint soul weapons in the world. I did not expect to see 4 different weapons today." The short old man was very anxious. "Mountain Master, aren't you just wasting time by saying such words at this time? For every bit of time wasted, the share that belongs to us will decrease by a lot. They are only in the human soul realm. This is only their first baptism. Yet they are already so powerful. I am looking forward to their future achievements." The mountain master of the Saint Weapon Mountain laughed loudly. "Let them be. As long as they can absorb the opportunity, please do as you wish. Our Saint Weapon Mountain is not so stingy. We will open it to them, as long as they can take it. Do as you wish." The short old man was so shocked that he could not say a word. Was this still the stingy and strong mountain master he knew? When did he become so generous? Chapter 3876. The short old man was well aware of the mountain master's temperament. After hearing the mountain master's words, he couldn't help but have a guess in his heart. He didn't continue to persuade him and turned to leave. At this moment, a strong thought appeared in his mind, and he couldn't get rid of it no matter what. Next, he held the mentality of watching a good show, watching Zichen and the other 2 obtain the opportunity. He wasn't anxious or impatient. This situation lasted for a full 4 hours, and the amount of resources consumed was enormous. The first to stop absorbing was Zichen's spirit shield. Next was Zichen's staff. Then it wasn't Lan Gumeng's sword, but Shanya's miracle stone which surprised Zichen. After all, the longer it lasted, the greater the harvest. In terms of quality, there shouldn't be any weapon that could compare to the miracle stone. The 4 Holy Soul weapons that had been promoted to the top 100 stopped absorbing energy. The 3 of them put away their weapons. A passage appeared in front of the 3 of them. This was the passage to leave. It should lead to the top of the mountain. After the 3 of them looked at each other, Zichen walked forward. However, after taking a step, he was surprised to find that he didn't reach the top of the Holy Weapon Mountain, but the entrance of the passage. In front of him, there was only one passage left, which led directly to the Holy Soul Mountain. After obtaining nothing on the Holy Talisman Mountain, the Holy Soul Mountain became Zichen's last hope. At the same time, Shanya and Noah also arrived at this place. The 2 of them didn't reach the top of the mountain, which surprised Zichen. However, when he thought of the situation he encountered at the top of the mountain, perhaps everything would have to wait until the end. At this moment, there was only one passage left in front of the 2 of them. Coincidentally, it was also the Holy Soul Mountain. "Then let's go together." Zichen smiled faintly and stepped into the passage. Lan Gumeng and Shanya followed closely behind. However, at this time, the 3 of them had closed all the bets, so it was impossible for anyone to place a bet. In the eyes of the people in the city, Zichen's group of 3 was clearly the strongest group that had entered the Saint Soul Mountain this time. After all, the 3 of them had hundreds of weapons. Who could compete with them in this place? For a time, most people sighed and regretted. If they had known the result would be like this, they would have made a lot of money by betting on Zichen. Why would they still be sighing here? In the Saint Soul Mountain, the Saint Soul technique was the main focus. If one was lucky enough, almost everything one saw could be a Saint Soul technique. For example, after killing a mutated beast, one might obtain a Saint Soul technique. For example, an ancient tree that had gained sentience could also be a wood-type offensive spell technique. "You fought with you, E?" Lan Gumeng asked. Walking on the first floor, the 3 of them were very relaxed, as if they were tourists enjoying the scenery. "I won by luck," Zichen said. "If it weren't for Yu Yi's shield, I'm afraid that the battle with St. Luin would have been much more difficult. With nothing to do, Lan Gumeng asked some more details of the battle, and Zichen answered them one by one. Yu Gui rested on Zichen's shoulder and scanned the surroundings. Once there was anything that didn't know what to do, it would attack immediately. Yu Gui's combat strength was also extraordinary. It had no problem bringing Zichen's group safely to the second floor. Did you see Hongyi? Lan Gumeng's beautiful eyes looked at Zichen as she stepped forward. Zichen shook his head and said, No, I didn't see Lan Rui either. I did see Noah. Shanya on the other side said, We didn't see them either. I don't know how they are. In fact, this was normal because the Saint Soul Mountain was very big, like a world. Not everyone could encounter it. There were quite a few people on this level. They were all existences that did not have the qualifications to enter the second level. Thus, they were trying their best to find the best opportunity on this level. Along the way, after seeing Zichen's group, many people's eyes flashed, but after thinking about it, they dismissed the idea of robbing. This disappointed many people in the city who were prepared to watch a good show. Soon, they arrived at the passage to the second floor, and there were more people wandering around. There was no guard at the entrance of the passage, but there was a strange force that blocked those who were not qualified on this floor. In other words, they couldn't see the passage to the second floor at all, so they couldn't go up. This was the obstruction of the Saint Soul Mountain. The three of them entered the passage and went up to the second floor. The area on the second floor was wider, so there were naturally more people on this floor. The three of them naturally wouldn't stay here for too long and headed straight for the third floor. When they were about to reach the entrance of the third floor, Zichen suddenly stopped. Lan Gumeng and Shan also stopped at the same time. Do you want to follow us directly to the third floor? Zichen's indifferent voice sounded. He had already noticed that they were being followed. Footsteps came from behind them, and many people appeared. Your perception is quite sharp. A laugh was heard, and a young man in luxurious clothes walked out from behind the crowd. The people in the city who were originally listless were all energized after seeing this scene. Since he dared to find trouble with Zichen, it was obvious that there was something fun to watch. No one was familiar with this young man, but it was obvious that he had a strong background. He had gathered many people in the Saint Soul Mountain, and he specialized in robbing. Moreover, he took pleasure in it, and didn't care much about the opportunities here. The voice came from behind. Zichen turned around and looked at the young man. The young man was wearing a long robe with flowing brilliance. He was showing off very much, as if he was worried that others wouldn't know that his robe was of extraordinary quality. There were many people around the young man, and they were all in the human soul realm. However, Zichen didn't care. His gaze fell on the young man's side, where a strong man stood there like an iron tower. The strong man's eyes were full of vigilance, but there was also some worry in them. He should be the young man's guardian. The young man said, I haven't had enough fun here, and I didn't expect a big fish to come. Shan Kuei told me that the three of you are quite famous, and that you were the first or second in the previous quota. He told me not to provoke you, but in my opinion, you are just lucky. The young man pointed at himself and said, Since I was young, I have never lacked luck. Therefore, it is truly your misfortune to have met this young master, who is the luckiest man in his life. Zichen frowned. What are you trying to say? The young man stretched out his hand again, pointing at Shanya and Lan Gumeng, and said, I came in a hurry this time, and didn't bring any maids with me. Let them serve me, and you can leave. Shanya and Lan Gumeng's eyes immediately turned cold. Zichen said indifferently, Do you want to die? The young man looked at Zichen and said proudly, In my eyes there is no such thing as death. The next moment the young man waved his hand and said, beat him hard, but don't kill him. I don't like to see blood. It's inauspicious. Hearing this, the people around rushed toward Zichen. In the city, most of the people who saw this scene couldn't bear to look at it. Chapter 3877. Bang, bang, bang. Powerful shock waves spread out in all directions. Sand and stones flew up from the ground, and thick smoke billowed. The existences that were rushing towards Zi-Chin came quickly and flew even faster. No one could block Zi-Chen's attack, and they were all blown away. After they landed on the ground, their faces were filled with shock as they looked at Zi-Chen in disbelief. They did not continue to move forward because they were not seriously injured. Obviously, it was not because the opponent was not strong, but because he did it deliberately. The control of this power made them even more frightened. If they insisted on moving forward, they would be courting death. In fact, the reason why they were not injured was because the young man had said that the opponent did not want to kill them. The strong man, who looked like an iron tower, stood in front of the young man. When he looked at Zi-Chin again, it was as if he was facing a great enemy. He had arrived late and did not see the scene of Zi-Chin obtaining first place in the assessment. He had only heard about it, so he did not pay too much attention to it. However, with the principle of avoiding unnecessary trouble, he advised the young master not to act rashly. He did not expect the opponent to be so strong. It was useless to rely on numbers. He also saw that the opponent did not want to kill him. The confident smile on the young man's face disappeared. He looked at Zi-Chan with surprise. "I didn't expect you to have some skills. But do you think you can scare me?" Shan Kuei beat him. The strong man named Shan Kuei said hesitantly, "Young master, it's getting late. Didn't you say you were hungry? Shouldn't we prepare to eat?" The young man said with dissatisfaction, "If I don't beat this guy to death, how can I be in the mood to eat? Beat me? Beat him hard, don't hold back." Shan Kuei looked helpless, but when he turned around, his eyes became firm. He cupped his fists at Zi-Chen and said, "Excuse me." The next moment, a violent aura surged out from Shan Kuei's body. He rushed forward in an instant, and his aura was like rolling thunder. Shanya and Lan Gumeng each took a step forward, wanting to fight. Zi-Chen slowly shook his head. With a flash of his body, he moved forward. Lightning radiated from his body. Compared to Shan Kuei's thunderous aura, Zi-Chen's power was the true power of thunder. The two figures met in midair, and it was as if two mountains had collided, causing a loud boom. The air waves rolled far away, and the trees in the distance were snapped in half. Countless leaves danced in the air. Shan Kuei's figure was pushed back by the collision, and his expression became more serious. With a slight sway of his body, he neutralized the opponent's power and continued forward. This time he used his martial arts. One move after another was displayed. The young man stood below and lifted his head to look at the scene. His eyes gradually narrowed as his expression changed. He was well aware of how strong Shan Kuei was, but in this physical confrontation, Shan Kuei was actually retreating. He was clearly at a disadvantage. The young man's face was filled with dissatisfaction. "Shan Kuei, don't hold back anymore. Let's fight." Hearing the young man's words, Shan Kuei's eyes narrowed. An even more powerful aura surged out from his body. Along with the appearance of this aura, a complete set of armor appeared on Shan Kuei's body. This set of armor covered Shan Kuei's entire body, including his head, hands, and feet. Only his eyes were exposed. It could be said that Shan Kuei was armed to the teeth. "Excuse me." Shan Kuei, who was fully armed, spoke again. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward. This time, it was as if he was carrying a monstrous wave of anger, and his aura was even more turbulent. Sensing the change in Shan Kuei's aura, Zi-Chen's expression became serious. His opponent's combat strength was not very strong, but with this set of armor, he needed to take him seriously. Zi-Chen threw out a punch. Lightning circled around his fist. This punch was full of momentum and could be considered as his most powerful punch. A powerful vibration force circled around his fist. Boom! Like a thunderclap exploding in the sky, a terrifying fluctuation spread out. Those who were closer to the battlefield were directly sent flying by the aftermath. Shan Kuei took a step back. Zi-chan retreated 10 feet. The previous vibration force was also blocked by the armor and could not be transmitted into the opponent's body. 2 streams of air appeared from below. Shanya and Lan Gumeng's figures appeared. When they saw Zi-chen retreating, a strange look appeared in their beautiful eyes. One must know that Zi-chen could even defeat Sheng Luan, but now he was repelled by a person who stayed on the 2nd floor. At this time, the city was also in an uproar. Although most people still did not recognize who the young man was, they recognized the origin of the armor on Shan Kuei's body. They really did not expect that the opening of the sacred mountain would even cause that family to send people here. Shan Kuei stood in the air, looking at Zi-chen, who was 10 feet away, and said, "You are not my opponent. Quickly retreat." "Retreat? That won't do. Shan Kuei, you can't make the decision." The young man's voice sounded again. "How to deal with him is my business. Now you just need to beat him until he can't fight back." "Young master, this..." Before Shan Kuei could finish his words, he was interrupted by the young man. "Don't worry. Even if the sky falls, I will hold it up." Shan Kuei had to agree, because he could not go against the young master's wishes. Zi-chen looked at the apologetic Shan Kuei and said, "In that case, I won't be polite." With a flash of brilliance, a spirit shield appeared in his hand. The young man could not help but sneer. "I thought you had a lot of skills. It turns out that you just want to block it." "But can you block it?" Shan Kuei looked at the extraordinary spirit shield in Zi-chen's hand, his eyes flashing, and asked, "May I ask, is this Yu Yi's companion's spirit shield?" "Good eyesight." Zi-chen held the shield in his right hand, saying, "Next, I won't hold back." "So you defeated Yu Yi?" In Shan Kuei's eyes, fighting spirit rose. This was the excitement of seeing a prey. The young man's expression changed again. This time, there was a touch of interest in his eyes. Zi-chen held the shield and moved forward. Shan Kuei clenched his fist and attacked. He did not use his sole weapon. This battle armor armed to the teeth was his strongest weapon. In the sky, the two of them were like 2 meteorites colliding again and again. The powerful fluctuations caused by the collision forced several people to retreat. Shanya and Lan Gumeng both retreated, leaving the battlefield to Zi-chen and Shan Kuei. One was a tailor-made battle armor made by a famous expert. The other was by Bing from Sacred Weapon Mountain. This was a real meeting of the strong. The young man who had retreated long ago looked at the scene of the collision in the sky, and a dazzling light appeared in his eyes. The deafening roar resounded through the sky. The spirit shield flickered. In addition to defense, the spirit shield also emitted a repulsive force, which repelled Shan Kuei every time. The battle lasted for nearly 20 breaths. After the last collision, Shan Kuei's battle armor exploded with a loud bang, announcing that it was broken. Chapter 3878. With the armor broken, Shan Kuei's battle prowess was naturally weakened. He was no longer a match for Zi-chen. The other party did not have the intention to kill, so Zi-chen stopped. Shan Kuei cupped his fists at Zi-chen and said in shame, "I lost." This was an indisputable fact, because Zi-chen's light shield was still intact. Shan Kuei said again, "May I ask if this weapon has been baptized?" Zi-chen nodded and said, "Its grade should be in the top 100 now. Losing to 100 soldiers is not an injustice." Shan Kuei shook his head and sighed. He seemed to be free and easy, but his face was full of regret because the expensive armor was ruined just like that. "So what if it's 100 soldiers?" "Shan Kuei, don't underestimate others and destroy your own prestige." The young man in the distance suddenly soared into the air and stood in front of Shan Kuei. There was also a rising battle intent on his body. "Young master, you can't." Shan Kuei was shocked and hurriedly dissuaded him. He had personally experienced Chen's battle prowess. Just that light shield alone was not something his young master could resist. It was unknown whether it was confidence or arrogance, but the young man waved his hand to signal Shan Kuei not to say anything. He looked at Zichen and said, "Today I'll let you see what it means to say that there is always someone better than you. Don't think that you're invincible just because you have 100 soldiers." Zichen looked at the young man and saw that a powerful aura suddenly surged out from the young man's body. It was emitted by his long robe. "It's the Fong clan. It's definitely the Fong clan. Only the Fong clan can forge such an armor and such a unique, magic spiritual robe." Seeing the young man's glowing robe, many people in the Sagely Mountain city exclaimed. The Fong clan was a force north of the Sagely Mountain, and it was a real big force. They were famous for refining defensive artifacts and were truly a huge clan with wealth that could rival countries. There had always been a rumor that the Fong clan's power could compete with one of the Sagely Mountains. It was obvious that they had a strong foundation. At this moment, the magic spiritual robe displayed by the young man was obviously of high quality. Zichen looked at the young man in front of him with coldness in his eyes. The young man smiled and said, "So what if you have 100 soldiers? If you're not good at attacking, how can you break through my defense?" All of a sudden, rays of light burst forth from the young man's robes. These rays of light scattered in all directions, forming a defensive barrier. "Even if I stand here and let you attack, you won't be able to break through my defense." The corners of the young man's mouth curled up. The sarcasm in his voice was very obvious. "Are you sure?" Zichen looked at the young man. The young man snorted and said, "Today, I will teach you a lesson. There is always someone better than you. Don't think that you are so amazing just because you defeated Yui." Zichen withdrew his shield and switched to his baton. Light blossomed from the staff, and a powerful aura was released. Zichen's stick fell. Space seemed to be torn apart by this staff. Shan Kuei felt as if he was facing a great enemy. He wanted to go up and block, but without his armor, he would definitely die if he went up. The young man signaled Shan Kuei to step back with his eyes. As expected, Shan Kuei stood there without moving. Shan Kuei had no choice but to retreat. Zichen's staff fell on the young man's body. Countless ripples surged out like ripples on the surface of water, layer by layer, neutralizing the power of Zichen's staff. Zichen felt that the power of the staff was constantly dissipating, but the young man's defense was still intact. Zichen's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had been careless. If it was a battle of life and death, he would be at a disadvantage. The young man still looked at Zichen with a smile. The sarcasm on his lips did not diminish. "How is it?" Zichen's second strike landed, and a purple-gold light blossomed from the body of the staff. With a bang, the youth's defense was immediately broken, and dozens of cracks appeared on his long robe. The young man's body flew backward. The previously arrogant robes hung on his body like rags, fluttering back and forth. "Young master!" Shan Kuei exclaimed and flew into the distance. However, his reaction was too slow. He did not expect that the difference in power between Zichen's first and second attack would be so great. The young man's body fell to the ground, and then he began to cough up blood. The surroundings were silent. Even the Sagely Mountain City was quiet for a moment. Shan Kuei came closer. The young man waved his hand and said, "I'm fine." As he spoke, he actually coughed up blood again. Shan Kuei was very worried about his young master, but he was more worried about Zichen. Hence, he turned around and looked at Zichen vigilantly. Zichen did not continue. He glanced at Shan Kuei, then at the young man, and then turned to leave. The young man staggered to his feet and looked at Zichen, who turned to leave. He laughed and let the blood flow from the corner of his mouth. He did not care and said, "This is only the second level, and you're already running away. Won't you be chased on the third level?" Lan Gumeng and Shan Ye looked back at the young man with cold eyes. It was Zichen who let him go. Not only did he not know how to be grateful, he even dared to provoke him. Let's go. Just as the two of them were hesitating whether they should teach the other party a lesson, Zichen's voice rang out in their ears. The two of them could only follow Zichen. Before they left, they did not forget to warn the young man with hateful eyes. That's right. It must be the second generation of the Fong clan, Fong Wumian. He could have provoked anyone, but he dared to provoke Zichen. A set of armor and a magic robe were destroyed, just like that. What a pity. What's there to pity? The Fong clan is rich, and that person is Fong Wulian. He was born to be a prodigal. The second generation of the Fong clan, Fong Wulian, was affectionately called Fong Wumian because of his reputation. He could do anything shameless. For example, in this trial, he went to the Saint Soul Mountain. Not only did he not gain anything, but he also suffered a great loss. Furthermore, there were countless similar stories. He was extremely proficient in swindling, raping, plundering, jesting, and stealing. It was said that he himself was not well liked in the Fong clan. If it wasn't for his extraordinary status, he would have died countless times already. However, to the pity of countless people, Fong Wulian had a good family background. His brother was also the future leader of the Fong clan. Therefore, many people dared not speak out against him. Fong Wulian, who was called Fong Wumian, was wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He patted Shan Kuei's shoulder and said, "You've worked hard." Shan Kuei was ashamed. "What's with your expression? Isn't it just a set of armor? I'll make you another set when we get back. Come, let's go back now." Fong Wulian said. "Go back now." Shan Kuei was stunned and said, "But we haven't gotten anything yet. We haven't been to the third floor either. It's already like this. If we don't go back, are we waiting to be beaten up by others?" Fong Wulian waved his hand and said, "I'm not going to the third floor. With my personality, I might beat up anyone I don't like. Right now, I can't beat anyone. Come, let's go back to the Sagely Mountain City and call a few girls. We'll go to the Undrunk brothel to drink and have fun." The city was filled with booze. Chapter 38-79. After entering the third level, Zichen remained silent. He seemed to have a lot on his mind. Seeing Zichen's silence, Lan Gumeng and Shanya were not in a good mood. Lan Gumeng muttered, "Actually, we shouldn't have let that arrogant guy go. If it weren't for his robe, he wouldn't have been able to withstand even one move from Zichen." This was to comfort Zichen. Of course, it was also the truth. Zichen came back to his senses and smiled. "I'm fine. I was just thinking about something and got a little distracted." Lan Gumeng smiled and teased, "That's good. Shanya, and I thought you had suffered a blow." Zichen said, "It's not a blow, but I did learn something." Lan Gumeng said in surprise, "That guy doesn't look like a decent person at first glance. You actually took his nonsense seriously?" Zichen smiled and did not explain. He was probably the only one who knew the reason behind this. On the third level of the Saint Soul Mountain, Zichen, Lan Gumeng, and Shanya each obtained a Saint Soul technique. This was what they deserved. Next, the three of them headed for the fourth level. As for whether they could reach the fourth level, Zichen was not worried at all. Lan Gumeng was a Saint Soul goddess. Her attainments in the Saint Soul technique were absolutely extraordinary. Entering the fourth level would not be a problem. Shanya's extraordinary background also proved that she had the potential. As for Zichen himself, he had to enter the fourth level to find the dark ghost soul devouring technique. This was his goal. There were obviously fewer people on this level. Some people they met along the way deliberately avoided them after seeing the three of them. This wasn't because they knew of Zichen's deeds in battle, and it was because they didn't want to cause trouble after coming here. If they were to fail miserably in an easy task and lose the fortune here, then the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. As they were about to reach the entrance of the 4th level, Zichen saw a person standing at the entrance of the 4th level. He was facing Zichen with his back to the entrance. It was a man with a young woman beside him. The young woman gave Zichen a familiar feeling, but he could not remember where he had seen her before. The 3 of them did not look at the woman. Instead, they looked at the man. They knew him. He had ranked 4th in the previous assessment. He was Luo Tsang. If Zichen and the other 2 had not appeared out of nowhere, he would have taken 1st place last time. You are much slower than I imagined, Luo Tsang said indifferently as he looked at Zichen. What's the matter? Asked Zichen. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to discuss with you what happened last time. Luo Tsang walked forward. The woman beside him did not move. Her eyes were dull, as if she was a human-shaped puppet. Zichen stared at Luo Tsang expressionlessly. At this moment, 2 more people appeared on both sides. Lan Gumeng and Shanya turned around to face the 2. Zichen used his sole focus and said, Don't be careless. Go all out. Luo Tsang moved. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. Go all out. Zichen shouted. Light flashed in front of him. He held the shield in his left hand and the staff in his right. The moment he held the shield, he activated it with all his strength. Luo Tsang appeared in front of him as if he had teleported. Like a torrent of power, he crazily poured toward Zichen. The shield blocked it. Boom! 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 The powerful force pushed Zichen back. At this moment, Zichen could only see the light of the bursting energy. Other than that, he could not see anything else. The powerful force was neutralized by the 100 soldiers' light shield. Some of the remaining force penetrated the light shield and entered Zichen's body. Within Zichen's body, there seemed to be the sound of a drum. Even though his physical body was strong after practicing combat arts, he was unable to withstand it at this moment. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Zichen's mouth. At this moment, Zichen's heart was filled with horror. If he had not been vigilant and attacked with all his strength, he would have been at a disadvantage because of his carelessness. Even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Obviously, this guy called Luo Tsang came prepared. Countless rays of light bloomed. Zichen continued to gather power in the light shield, allowing the power in his body to be drained quickly. At this moment, he only wanted to defend. Counterattack did not exist. How are you? At the same time, he shouted and inquired about the 2's situation. The 2 did not respond. Zichen's ears were full of raging energy. His perception had been blocked. This made his heart skip a beat, and he had a bad feeling. At this moment, the Sagely Mountain City was in an uproar. No one could have imagined that after killing Shangluan, Zichen, who was almost invincible, would be attacked so violently. Luo Tsang was wearing armor, holding a weapon in his hand, and there were sacred talismans on both sides of him. He also had various weapons that could launch attacks. In an instant, he displayed a violent attack that directly drowned Zichen. At the same time, in another direction, Shanya and Lan Gumeng were also attacked. Fortunately, the 2 girls had listened to Zichen and displayed their strongest means. Of course, it was also because their opponent was not as strong as Zichen. The powerful impact forced Zichen to continuously retreat. During this period, the power that fell on the light shield was slowly weakening. This weakening was only relative. It did not mean that it was not scary. When the energy reached a controllable range, Zichen suddenly struck out with his staff. More than 2/3 of the patterns on the staff lit up. The original black color turned into a purple gold color. The world suddenly lit up. A purple gold staff shadow appeared and destroyed the violent energy in front of it. With a boom, the staff shadow sent Luo Tsang flying. The energy in front of him dissipated. Zichen saw Luo Tsang, Shanya, and Lan Gumeng. He also saw the other 2. However, The two of them were lying in a pool of blood. They were no longer breathing. Shanya and Lan Gumeng were unharmed. In front of them, a sacred soul weapon had appeared. If it had not been for the sacred soul weapon, the two of them would have been at a disadvantage. The battle was over, but the two girls were still a little pale. They still had lingering fear. Luo Tsang fell to the ground and spat out blood. He looked at Zi-chan with an ugly expression. Zi-chan walked slowly toward Luo Tsang with a shield in his left hand and a staff in his right. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Shanya and Lan Gumeng also approached him. After experiencing the previous attack, the three of them would not be careless. At this moment, they would join forces to kill Luo Tsang. "You're really lucky." Luo Tsang snorted coldly. He stood up and a light appeared under his feet. In the next moment, his body was enveloped by the light and disappeared. He had used his strongest move and still could not kill Zichen. Luo Tsang naturally had to leave. Otherwise, what awaited him would be death. Fong Wulian, who was about to reach the Sagely Mountain City, looked up and saw the scene in the city. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. This time his smile was full of mockery. Chapter 3880. The spectators in the Sagely Mountain City had yet to recover from their shock. Even though Zichen had created another miracle, not only had he received the recognition of the 4 mountains, but all of them had also reached the heaven rank. Apart from being unprecedented, it was likely that no one would be able to do so in the future. At that moment, everyone was shocked by the scene of Luo Tsang's attack. Some people had calculated that the power that Luo Tsang unleashed in that instant far exceeded the attack of the 100 soldiers, Sword of Clouds, and Rain. Zi-chen's shield was still intact, which was enough to prove that its ranking had increased. At the same time, many people felt that Zi-chen was too lucky. If he had hesitated for a moment, he would have died without a doubt. For a moment, the city was abuzz with discussion. On the 3rd floor, the woman who had been standing in the same spot with lifeless eyes gradually regained her clarity after Luo Tsang had escaped. In the next moment, her appearance also changed, becoming petite and cute. If Zi-chen was here, he would definitely recognize this woman. She was the service staff that he had seen at the Undrunk restaurant. However, for some reason, she had changed her appearance and was standing beside Luo Tsang. She tried hard to recall what had happened before. Her pretty face changed little by little until she recalled everything. Then her face turned pale again, and her eyes were filled with fear. If it wasn't for Zichen, she would have been finished. The image still did not disappear. Many people saw this scene and were all puzzled. Only a few people who recognized the woman's existence changed their expressions. Among them, an old man was so angry that his beard was blowing and his eyes were glaring. "That damned guy! How dare he have designs on the Undrunk restaurant? Investigate this Luo Tsang and find out who he is. Also, bring him back here." Behind the old man, a black shadow disappeared into thin air. The terrified woman looked back at the passage behind her, and at the same time felt extremely lucky. After a slight hesitation, she turned and entered the 4th floor. She was very relaxed, which showed that she had great potential. Upon entering the 4th floor, she saw Zi-chen and the other 2. The 3 of them also sensed something and immediately turned around. When they saw the woman, they were all very surprised. Who would have thought that the 4th person to come up would be a girl? The next moment, Zi-chen recognized the other party. Shanya and Lan Gumeng also recognized the other party, and a strange look appeared in their eyes. How could a service member of the Undrunk restaurant come to the 4th floor? However, the 3 of them did not pay too much attention to it. After nodding slightly at the other party, they continued to turn around and search for their own opportunities. In front of Zi-chen, there were more than 10 balls of light floating in front of him. Each one of them recorded a spell. Looking at these holy spirit arts, he was dazzled and didn't know what to choose. On the other hand, Shanya and Lan Gumeng did not have to worry about it. Both of them only had one saint spirit technique each, so it was easy for them to choose. Zichen stood in front of the light, hesitating. Judging from the surface, it was impossible to distinguish between good and bad. It seemed like he could only choose one at random. Furthermore, he didn't dare to use his soul force to casually investigate. What if it directly recognized him as its master? After coming here and walking such a long way, Zichen certainly did not want to miss out on this opportunity. He stood there, hesitating and hesitating. Lan Gumeng and Shan had already made their only choice. It was obvious that the two of them were very satisfied with their gains. You don't know what to choose. Lan Gumeng walked in front of Zichen and also looked at the light balls. However, she had already lost the right to choose. Zichen nodded. These light balls were all the same size. At present, he could only judge them by their color. However, the colors were gold, black, and the color of flames. There was no unique feature at all. Shanya knew Zichen's purpose, so when she came to Zichen's side, she did the same as Lan Gumeng. She did not give any opinion to Zichen. The woman from the undrunk restaurant looked back. She noticed that Zichen was in a difficult position. After a slight hesitation, she decided to help him. Hey! The three of them immediately turned around and looked at the woman who spoke. If you don't know what to choose, try to use the cultivation method. Choose the one you want the most. The woman from the undrunk restaurant suggested. Zichen's eyes lit up. How could he forget this point? Zichen smiled at her gratefully. When he turned to look at the light balls again, he had an idea in his mind. He took a deep breath and began to use the ghost-devouring soul technique. His pure soul power surged out. What Zichen wanted the most right now was, of course, the second part of the ghost-devouring soul technique. Unfortunately, after the soul power surged out, the light balls in front of him did not change at all. Zichen was stunned. He was unwilling to give up. He continued to try, but there was still no reaction. The expected thing happened. There was no follow-up to the cultivation method here. Zichen's face was full of disappointment. Then he shook his head. Looking at Zichen's action, Shanya felt a little sad for him. However, deep in her heart, she was actually a little happy. This was very contradictory. Zichen tried a few more times. The light balls in front of him still did not have any reaction. This made him completely disappointed. The second part of the ghost-devouring soul technique was indeed not here. However, which one should he choose now? Subconsciously, the power flowing on the surface of Zichen's body changed. This time, it became the power of the tremor fighting technique. Just as this power appeared, the quiet light balls in front of him suddenly began to tremble. Not one, but all of them. This made Zichen stunned. Even Shanya and Lan Gumeng were slightly stunned. They all sensed it. Could these techniques be of great use to Zichen? The power of the tremor fighting technique flowed out unconsciously. After noticing the abnormal changes in front of him, Zichen used the tremor fighting technique with all his strength, causing more tremor fighting power to appear on the surface of his body. The dozens of light balls in front of him began to tremble violently. They seemed to want to come to Zichen's side, but there seemed to be a strange force in the dark, preventing them from moving forward. Just as Zichen was wondering if he should choose one randomly, ripples suddenly appeared in the space in front of him. In the center of the ripples, a passage appeared. In the passage, there was a pitch-black light ball. When this light ball appeared, the surrounding light balls that had sensed it stopped trembling and returned to normal. Zichen had a strong feeling in his heart. The technique in the black light ball was of the same origin as the tremor fighting technique. In the next moment, he made a decision in his heart. This is it. When the elders in the Sagely Mountain City saw this scene, they were shocked. On the Holy Soul Mountain, Sheng Rao was so angry that he stomped his feet. Chapter 3881. According to Sheng Rao's plan, Sheng Luin was going to fight Ziqin on the Saint Soul Mountain. After killing Ziqin, he would take away the most powerful combat technique in front of everyone's eyes. Unexpectedly, the battle between the two broke out prematurely, and Sheng Luin, who had the 100 Weapons Cloud and Rain Sword, was defeated. The most powerful technique that should have belonged to Sheng Luin was also taken away by Ziqin. All of his plans had come to naught. This time he was defeated by Ziqin. It could be said that his loss was extremely heavy. Looking at the dark ball of light that was flying toward Ziqin, Sheng Rao wanted to rush forward and take it all away. This was because it was a technique that he had always wanted, but had never been able to obtain. Phew! Oh, Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. His goal was accomplished, and he had no more regrets. Beside him, Wu Yud exclaimed, "Amazing! Amazing!" At this point, the test was over. The black ball of light entered Ziqin's sea of consciousness, and a message emerged. The power of the Death God. The most powerful force in combat techniques, the power of the Death God. Now was not the time to meditate. After the ball of light entered his sea of consciousness, Ziqin turned around. At this moment, the woman from the Undrunk Tower also made her choice. A passage appeared in front of them. Ziqin looked at the woman and said, "Let's go together." The woman nodded, and the four of them stepped out of the passage, one after another. This time, they did not come to the peak of the Saint Soul Mountain, but to an open space that looked like a square. There were only the four of them here. "Not bad. Your performance is very good." A laugh came from the side. When the four of them turned their heads, they saw Sheng Rao. He was the person in charge of this test, and his face was full of smiles. The four of them cupped their fists and saluted. The necessary etiquette was still necessary, especially you, Ziqin. Not only did you get the recognition of the 4 mountains, but you also reached the peak of all 4 mountains. Your situation has never happened before, and I don't think it will happen again in the future. Sheng Rao came in front of Ziqin, patted him on the shoulder, and said with an encouraging smile, "The Saint Soul Mountain needs an elder like you to protect it. Only then can it last for a long time." "Senior, you flatter me." Ziqin cupped his fists again and said politely, "Next, the Mountain Master will personally appear and give you the elder's token. Just wait for a moment." The sacred radius came and went quickly. The person who appeared in front of Ziqin was the Mountain Lord of Saint Talisman Mountain. He was the only one here. The other 3 mountain lords were nowhere to be seen. At this time, the place where Ziqin was standing seemed to have been isolated into a small space, and the others had disappeared. Amazing! Truly amazing! The Mountain Lord of Saint Talisman looked at Ziqin and sighed. Ziqin scratched his head and said nothing. According to the rules of the sacred mountain, you must leave behind a drop of essence, blood, before you leave. The Hill Master said, during this period, you can choose to live on the sacred mountain or in the sacred mountain city. Ziqin thought for a moment and said, "Let's go to Sagely Mountain City. I should be staying here for a few more days. Then you can go back first. Our people will contact you later." In this place, the Mountain Lord did not say much and left directly. After the Mountain Lord left, Shanya and Lan Gumeng appeared again. The 2 of them also met a person each, but like Ziqin, they did not leave behind any essence blood. The 3 of them began to turn back. During this time, Ziqin deliberately paid attention to the surroundings to see if he could meet any acquaintances. He did not find anyone until they returned to the inn. After asking the innkeeper, he was told that only the 3 of them had returned. The others had not returned yet. The next step was to wait. After a few hours, the few of them returned one after another. In this trial, the one who stayed the longest was Ziqin. It took a long time to go to the 4 mountains one after another. Everyone returned safely, which was naturally a joyous occasion. Needless to say, Zi Chen's achievements were seen by everyone. Noah had entered the 3rd level of the Sacred Beast Mountain. Next, he needed to abide by the agreement of the Sacred Beast Mountain and stay in the Sacred Beast Mountain for 100 years to serve it. Lan Hongyi and Lan Rui also reached the 3rd level respectively. This was already an amazing potential. As for Pang Chong, although he did not gain anything in the Sacred Beast Mountain, he also made a lot of money by betting on Zi Chen this time. However, this reunion also meant that they would have to part soon. Noah only had 3 days, after which he would enter the Holy Mountain. Let's go to the Undrunk restaurant. Today, we will not go back until we are drunk, Zi Chen suggested. Before entering, he also bet heavily on himself. Although it was not much, he still made a lot of money. The few of them left the inn and headed to the Undrunk restaurant. The business of the Undrunk restaurant was still booming. After Zi Chen and the others entered, everyone in the hall on the 1st floor cast their eyes on them. The previous discussions about Zi Chen had already stopped abruptly. Immediately, a service staff came to greet them. The current Zi Chen was really well known. Looking at the full 1st floor, Zi Chen asked worriedly, "Are there any seats left?" "Yes, please come with me." The smile on the service staff's face did not fade as he politely gestured for Zi Chen to enter the 2nd floor. "Hey, did you make a mistake? Didn't you say there were no seats when I asked earlier?" At this moment, a young man asked unhappily. "Sorry, Lord Zi Chen is our distinguished guest. His dining area is not on the 2nd floor but on the 3rd. As soon as this was said, many diners who were familiar with the rules of the Undrunk restaurant changed their expressions. The 3rd floor of the Undrunk restaurant in the Sacred Beast Mountain City was not open to the public. Only the distinguished guests of the Undrunk restaurant were qualified to enter the 3rd floor. Such distinguished guests must be people of high status. According to Zi Chen's current realm and achievements, he did not seem to be a distinguished guest. Zi Chen was not sure about this. Since there were seats, it was naturally a good thing. After going up to the 3rd floor, Zi Chen found that there was only one room. The room was very luxuriously decorated and was several levels higher than the 2nd floor. "Did you make a mistake?" Lan Rui knew that this place was unusual, so he asked. "Don't worry, sirs. This was specially instructed by the manager. There can't be a mistake." After saying that, the service staff left politely. "Order whatever you want to eat today. I'll pay for all the expenses." A familiar female voice came from behind. A petite and cute girl walked in from the door. "It's you." Zi Chen recognized her. It was the girl who had warned him before. He was a little surprised and hurriedly said, "Thank you for what you did before." "I should be the one saying that. Thank you for saving me. Today's meal is my thanks to you." The girl came in front of Zi Chen and made a salute. "Jiu, thanks young master Zi Chen for saving me." Zi Chen was a little confused. Chapter 3882. Shijiu's sudden thanks made Zi Chen very puzzled. He looked at her and said, "Did you get the wrong person?" "Get the wrong person, my ass. She's already called out your name. How could I get it wrong?" Li walked in from outside. He first went to the inn, but he didn't see Zi Chen, so he came here. It wasn't difficult to find Zi Chen now. Along the way, many people were talking about seeing Zi Chen in person. "Little girl, I'll accept your thanks on behalf of Zi Chen. Serve the good wine and dishes." Li looked at Shijiu and said, "Okay." Shijiu nodded immediately, a smile on her face, and then went to arrange everything. After Shijiu left, Zi Chen looked at Li, waiting for him to explain. "You're also a pig. Can't you just say you're welcome?" Li scolded Zi Chen, then explained the reason for saving Zi Chen. Zi Chen's expression couldn't help but change. No wonder the woman with the dull eyes looked familiar. So that's why. In that case, That Luo Tsang obviously had some ulterior motives for Shizhou. Then what about Shizhou's identity? Zi Chen's expression changed slightly as he looked at Oli. Oli nodded, indicating that he guessed right. Since Shizhou's identity wasn't Lo, why did she serve them food and wine last time? In the next moment, Zi Chen thought of something. Last time when they were drinking here, Oli bragged that he was the young master of the Sacred Mountain gambling house. At that time, he said that he was the young master of the Undrunk restaurant. At that time, Oli said that the Undrunk restaurant didn't have a young master, only a young lady, and his answer at that time was offensive. Coincidentally, Shizhou was next to him at that time. Thinking of this small episode, Zi Chen's expression couldn't help but change, and his face turned slightly red. It seemed that she heard what he said. Fortunately, the others didn't pay attention to Zi Chen, but curiously looked at the decorations in the room. Since the Undrunk brothel had opened its doors to welcome guests, it naturally wouldn't refuse a guest, even if the guest was very annoying. After Fang Wulian was defeated, he came to the Undrunk brothel. Even though the manager hated him, he couldn't chase him out. Even if the restaurant was full, there would still be people who would take the initiative to give up their seats for him. After all, he was the second young master of the Fang clan. Even if he didn't have any strength and had a terrible reputation, he was still extremely wealthy, so everyone had to give him some face. Shan Kuei pushed open the door and happened to see Fang Wulian hugging two beautiful women. At this moment, the two of them took turns pouring wine into Fang Wulian's mouth. Fang Wulian smiled and said, "Although drunken immortal is good, drinking like this is boring. Come, use your mouth to feed young master." "Young master, you're so bad." The two women in his arms smiled shyly. Shan Kuei coughed softly and said in a low voice, "Young master, Zi Chen is back and he came to the Undrunken. He sure knows how to enjoy himself." Fang Wulian snorted and said, "Let's go and meet him." He waved his hand and the two women stood up from his arms. Shan Kuei said, "But he's now on the 3rd floor." "The 3rd floor?" Fang Wulian was startled. "Where is he qualified to go?" Shan Kuei said, "I don't know, but he's indeed on the 3rd floor." Fang Wulian, who had just stood up, sat down again. "That place isn't for everyone. Forget it. I'll find him another day. Come, let's continue drinking. Shan Kuei, you should also drink." Shan Kuei shook his head and said no, then turned and left. Although he was used to such a scene, he knew that he wasn't suitable for such an atmosphere. This time it was still Xiao who personally brought the wine for Zi Chen. It was the superior Undrunk immortal. Zi Chen knew the reason and didn't say anything more. After all, the other party was a girl and her reputation was very important. Under Li's invitation, Xiao sat down without hesitation. After seeing Li's signal, Zi Chen had to stand up and introduce these friends to Xiao one by one. After introducing Noah and Pang Chong, Xiao took the initiative to say, "Next, I know that he is Lan Rui, and this sister is Lan Hongyi." Sister Shanya, who was recognized by the 2 mountains and entered the 4th floor. Sister Lan Gumeng, who was recognized by the 3 mountains and you, Zichen. "This is the first time I've met you, so I'll drink first as a sign of respect." Xiao picked up a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. Ali said, "Good." Following that, the atmosphere became much more lively. In another room, Wu Yud was drinking tea with an old man. He came with young master Li, but he didn't go in. "Did you get anything out of the old man?" The room was filled with the fragrance of tea. Wu Yud put down the teacup. "What?" The old man looked up at Wu Yud. There was confusion in those turbid eyes. Wu Yud picked up the teacup again. Although he had been with Li these days and seemed to have nothing to do, he knew all the news. Luo Tsang, who had appeared out of nowhere, almost overturned the situation of the Sacred Mountain gambling house last time. This time he had suddenly made a move and almost killed Zichen. Moreover, the other party could silently avoid the detection of the mirror spirit and capture the daughter of the Undrunk brothel. Obviously, he wasn't an extraordinary person. However, after the other party came out, he seemed to have disappeared from the world. No matter how hard the Sacred Mountain Gambling House searched, they couldn't find him. Wu Yid guessed that the other party had been captured by this very benevolent-looking old man. The old man had captured Luo Tsang to vent his anger, but the Sacred Mountain Gambling House wanted to get some very important information from him. However, the old man in front of him was obviously unwilling to cooperate. After thinking for a while, Wu Yid put down the teacup again. He didn't want to talk in riddles, so he said, "We have a secret method. Maybe we can get something out of him." The old man said, "The other party came prepared. My men couldn't find him." Wu Yid's expression couldn't help but change. The Sacred Mountain Gambling House couldn't be found, and the old man couldn't catch the other party either. It was obvious that Luo Tsang was well prepared. And to be able to do this, it was enough to show that the other party had the shadow of the Sacred Mountain behind him. Only with the help of the Sacred Mountain could the other party disappear without a trace. The old man looked at Wu Yid's changing expression and said, "Your Sacred Mountain is really too chaotic." Wu Yid fell silent. For the next half of the day, he had been drinking tea and didn't say a word. The old man seemed to treat Wu Yid as if he didn't exist, occasionally teasing the spirit bird in the cage next to him. And in his mind, his previous conversation with little Jiu appeared. "Girl, you have to try to take charge of things on your own." After such an uncontrollable thing had happened, the old man knew that he couldn't protect little Jiu behind him forever. She needed to spread her wings, take charge of things on her own, and take over the entire Sea family. Zichen ate this meal to his heart's content, and he also made a friend in little Jiu. After the group returned to the inn, Zichen saw the Shishan brothers. The two of them had been sitting on the first floor of the inn, obviously waiting for him for a long time. After seeing Zichen, the two brothers immediately stood up, looking very excited. Chapter 3883. Zichen shook his head and dispersed the smell of alcohol on his body. "Come with me." The others returned to their rooms. The Shishan brothers followed Zichen to his residence. The two brothers were very excited. They had made a lot of money betting on Zichen this time. Now that Zichen's fame was like the sun in the sky, everyone knew about him, while the two brothers had become famous in the gambling world. This had caused their status to rise. Even the incident of them gambling their lives to borrow blue crystal coins when they came to the Sagely Mountain City had become a legend. After entering the room, Shishan's brother immediately took out a glowing pouch. It was similar to a storage pouch. Inside, it was half of their winnings. This was because Shishan's brother had said that they would split everything. "Please accept it, sir." Shishan's brother said respectfully. He was willing to give it. Zichen glanced at the pouch but did not take it immediately. Instead, he asked, "When do you plan to leave the Sagely Mountain City?" "We should stay for a few more days." Shishan's brother did not understand why Zichen would ask such a question, but he still answered after giving it some serious thought. Zichen continued, "What do you plan to do next? Do you still want to be a bandit?" The two brothers were a little embarrassed. Shishan's brother quickly shook his head and said, "No, we won't do that again." Zichen nodded and said, "In that case, why don't you do something for me?" "Sir, please tell us what you need." The two brothers said in unison. Zichen said, "From now on, you two will follow Pang Chong and protect him for 100 years. Protect Pang Chong for 100 years? The two brothers were stunned. This was too unexpected. They had thought that Zichen would arrange for them to do something big. They did not expect it to be such a small matter. Looking at the two brothers who were slightly stunned, Zichen asked, "Can you do it?" "Yes, of course. Not to mention 100 years. Even 500 years won't be a problem." Shishan's brother patted his chest and said, this time it was all because of Zichen that they were able to turn their luck around. Moreover, The rewards they had obtained were enough for them to change their guns for cannons and redecorate themselves. A full set of good equipment could greatly increase everyone's combat strength. Brother Shishan also nodded, indicating that this was not a problem. That's it then. You can take these things back, Zichen said, waving his hand. Sir, this is our... Before Brother Shishan could finish a sentence, he was interrupted by Zichen. Use them well. Follow Pang Chong. See more, learn more. I believe that you are not bad people. You don't lack resources now, so I hope you can do something useful. All right, I'm going to rest. The two brothers looked at each other in dismay. Clearly, they did not expect this to happen. Zichen urged them again, and the two had no choice but to leave. They would remember this kindness in their hearts. That night, Zichen told Pang Chong about this matter. Naturally, Pang Chong had no objections. The combat strength of the two brothers was not weak. If they could really wholeheartedly do good, it would naturally be extremely good. The next day, Pang Chong and the Shishan brothers left. Zichen did not see the three of them off. Clearly, he did not want them to attract too much attention. Before leaving, Zichen repeatedly reminded the three of them to be careful on the road. Another 2 days passed. Noah also had to leave for the sacred mountain. It was time to say goodbye, and this time they did not know when they would meet again. Lan Hongyi, who was also about to leave, looked at Zichen and said, "Send me off." Zichen nodded and walked forward. The others tactfully stayed behind. Lan Rue did not need to go to the sacred mountain. Lan Hongyi did not need to go either. The elders of the Lan family had already informed the sacred mountain, but Lan Hongyi insisted on staying. After leaving the inn, the two walked along the road in silence. There was constant laughter all around. Along the way, many people pointed at Zichen and whispered when they saw him. "This time I will stay in the sacred mountain for 100 years." Lan Hongyi broke the silence. "I will go north," Zichen said. "Is there no destination?" Lan Hongyi asked. Zichen shook his head and sighed. "I will send Little Mute to the place, or I will find what I want. Apart from these two things, I should not stop." "Then, after 100 years, won't you have come a long way?" Lan Hongyi looked to the north. The world was so big that she could not see the end. Maybe. In fact, it was also possible that he would leave, because Zichen felt that he had stayed in this world for too long. What followed was silence until the two reached the city gate. "Let's go. I wish you a safe journey." Walking out of the city, Lan Hongyi walked forward freely, waving at Zichen without looking back. "Goodbye." Zichen waved goodbye, but after a few steps, Lan Hongyi suddenly turned around and ran toward Zichen. Zichen's hand was still hanging in the air when his body was embraced by Lan Hongyi. A touch of warmth and softness came. Zichen was stunned on the spot as if he was electrocuted. About 3 breaths later, he slowly put down his hand and prepared to give Lan Hongyi a hug. But at this moment, Lan Hongyi had already broken free from Zichen's embrace. She looked at Zichen and mocked. "What? You want to take advantage of me? Dream on." Zichen stood there awkwardly. "So what if you create a miracle and gain the recognition of the 4 mountains? So what if you leave your name in history? I still don't like you." Lan Hongyi turned and left without looking back. "If you want to woo me, wait another 100 years." This time, Lan Hongyi did not look back. After walking more than 100 feet, her eyes turned red and tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Zichen stood there and stared at Lan Hongyi's back until her slender figure disappeared from his field of vision. He turned and went back, feeling a little emotional. After returning to the inn, Lan Rue told them that he was leaving and gestured for the 3 to take care. Since the last time he left the Lan family, this was the furthest Lan Rue, the future heir, could go. As the future heir of the Lan family, Lan Rue had his own mission. It was impossible for him to accompany Zichen around the world. The group of people sent Lan Rue out of the inn. Lan Rue waved goodbye to everyone. Zichen, I'll be counting on you from now on. Zichen nodded and understood what Lan Rue meant. His friends left one after another. Even Zichen was a little depressed at this moment. It seems that you're in a bad mood. Do you want me to treat you to a meal? A voice came from the side. It was Xiao'er, the daughter of the undrunk restaurant. When she arrived, she saw Lan Rue leaving, so she waved at him. Why are you here? Zichen looked back at her. I'm here to chat with a few sisters. It seems that I came at a bad time. I should have come earlier. Xiao'er said, if you're sad, I can treat you to a drink. What's the point of drinking with you? Chapter 3884. The voice was discordant and ear-piercing. Zichen did not even need to turn around to know who it was. Lan Gumeng and Shanya, who were already in a bad mood, immediately stared coldly at the newcomer. The newcomer was Fong Wulian. His defensive robe was destroyed by Zichen last time. He suffered a great loss and became the laughingstock of the world once again. Fong Wulian, just like his name. Shan Kuei followed beside him. He, who was originally behind them, felt the murderous intent from the two girls and immediately walked to the front. Fong Wulian waved his hand, indicating that Shan Kuei should not be bothered. Who are you? Shijio stared at Fong Wulian with an unfriendly gaze. Second young master of the Fong family. Fong Wulian laughed and raised his head proudly. You're that faceless? Shijio was very surprised. She did not expect to see this second-generation heir with her own eyes. However, she quickly reacted and retreated with a look of disgust. It was as if the other party was something bad and would affect her if he got too close. Little beauty, you don't have to be so close to me. You're not my wife. Fong Wulian chuckled and looked at Shijio from head to toe. But you have a good figure. I'm still lacking a girl to warm my bed. I wonder if you're interested? Bah, why don't you go and die? When was I close to you? I said that you have no face. Fong Wumian, Shijio said with a look of disgust. Little beauty, if you're willing to warm my bed, I don't care about my face. How about it? Think about it? Who knows? I might even reward you with a magic robe if I'm happy, Fong Wulian said with a smile. Bah, I'm not interested, Shijio said with disdain. However, her face was red with anger. Seeing that Fong Wulian was about to say something, Lan Gumeng said coldly, either get lost or die. Choose one. During this time, Zichen kept looking at Fong Wulian. He already knew the other party's name. Lan Rue had told him about the other party's background. At that time, Lan Rue had hinted to Zichen to be careful of Fong Wulian's revenge. This was also the first time Zichen learned about the forces outside the sacred mountain. He learned about the Fong clan's custom-made armor and unique magic spirit robes. What's the matter? Zichen finally spoke. I'm here to discuss a big business deal with you. Are you interested? Fong Wulian said with a smile. Not interested. Zichen refused directly. Shijio snorted proudly. Forget it if you're not interested. Fong Wulian was a little disappointed. He continued, I happen to have time today. Why don't you treat me to a meal? Are we going to the undrunk brothel? Shijio sneered. You're just a rich second generation. And you want Zichen to treat you to a meal? Even if you do, he won't go. Lan Gumeng and Shan looked at Fong Wulian as if they were looking at an idiot. Unexpectedly, Zichen did not immediately refuse. Instead, he thought for a while and said, okay. Hearing this word, the three women seemed to have an auditory hallucination. They turned their heads and looked at Zichen in surprise, especially his eyes. They all wanted to see if Zichen was under the other party's illusion. Zichen's eyes were clear. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be under any illusion. At the same level, no one could affect Zichen's soul. Fong Wulian laughed and said, There's no time like the present. How about now? Beauties, come with me? The three women still looked at Zichen. They felt extremely incredulous. Why did Zichen think so highly of this shameless guy? I can go alone. Looking at the expressions of the three people, it was obvious that they were not willing to deal with Fang Wulian. So Zichen gave up the invitation. Three beauties, goodbye then? Fang Wulian waved at the three people with a look that was asking for a beating. Shan Kuei signaled his young master to leave quickly. These three women's tempers were not so good. They might really fight. Seeing Zichen leave, Zhou said angrily, I didn't expect Zichen to be such a person. Come, let's go and eat. So, the three women walked towards the undrunk restaurant at the same time, but they kept a distance from Zichen and the others. It was still early, so there were not many guests in the undrunk restaurant. The three went to the second floor together and asked for a private room. After ordering a few dishes, the atmosphere became silent again. I really have a big deal to cooperate with you. Fang Wulian said, Not interested. Zichen said lightly, Actually, you should hear it. Fang Wulian said unwillingly, As long as it's done, I will tailor a set of armor for you. Its defensive strength will be stronger than Shan Kuei's last time. After learning about Fang Wulian from Lan Rui, Zichen also knew about the strength of the Fang family. It was a power that could be compared to the Yishan, and its depth was even stronger than the Lan family. Although the two powers were not in the same area, they would still cooperate with each other. Among them, many of the Lan family's armors were from the Fang family. As for the magic spiritual robes, although there were a few, their grades were very low. The Fang family had a rule that high-grade magic spiritual robes were never given to outsiders. Zichen shook his head and said, Not interested. At this time a woman walked in and took 3 jars of undrunk immortal. Before she left, she looked at Zichen with a strange gaze. Obviously, she was also very surprised. Why would the famous Zichen be with the infamous Fang Wulian? Fang Wulian took the initiative to help Zichen open the seal. He seemed very attentive. Just treat it as doing me a favor. It's like this. In order to show the fairness of their search for a successor, my family has decided to open a trial. They have placed the Fang family's top refining skills in the ancestral land. Whoever obtains it will be the future successor. Zichen took the wine jar and said bluntly, What does this have to do with me? I didn't say the second half. Fang Wulian continued. Because the ancestral land is full of danger, it's very dangerous for a person to enter alone. Therefore, the family allows for external help. Zichen, if you can help me become the successor, I will tailor a set of armor for you for free. Together with your combat skills, it can increase your combat strength by several times or even 10 times. I don't have that ability. Go find someone else. At this time, another person came in with a few exquisite dishes. The conversation between the two temporarily stopped. After the other party left, Fang Wulian immediately said, Don't, you have to help me. How about this? I will give you a magic spiritual robe after it's done. How about a high-grade magic spiritual robe that is not given to outsiders? Zichen shook his head again and said, I really don't have that ability. Go find someone else. Fang Wulian smiled bitterly and said, I want to find someone, but there needs to be someone suitable. Originally, Shanluan and you were the people I was looking for. But you crippled them, so I can only find you. Crippled? Zichen looked at Fang Wulian. He didn't cripple them, he killed them. Chapter 3885. Still alive? Are you sure? Zichen's expression changed. He did not hold back at that time, so he was sure that the two of them were dead. With the existence of the mirror spirit, as long as their family takes care of them, they usually won't die in the sacred mountain trials. This has become common knowledge. Of course, most people would never know about this. Fang Wulian pointed at himself and said, Take me for example. I didn't participate in the first and second trials, but didn't I still go to the sacred Soul Mountain? Zichen was very surprised that the two of them were still alive. At the same time, he had a new impression of Saint. There were rules everywhere, but there were exceptions everywhere. You've helped me this time. After this, I'll definitely give you a high-grade magic spirit robe. Fong Wulian said again. Even though she had eliminated a lot of food and felt much better, Xiao was still in a bad mood when she returned to the Undrunk restaurant after bidding farewell to her two sisters. She went straight to the old man's place and pushed the door open. When she saw the old man drinking tea and playing with his bird, she was even angrier. "You've got the wrong person," she said directly, her tone very unpleasant. The old man looked up at Xiao and asked with a smile, "Oh, who did I get the wrong person?" "Zichen. He's not as good as you think. He's no different from other people. He's a very vulgar person." Xiao pouted and said angrily, "Tell me about it." The old man was clearly interested. Today, Fong Wumian went to look for him. After knowing that he was the second young master of the Fong family, his expression immediately changed. When Fong Wumian asked for a meal, he was very willing to treat him to a meal. Xiao said angrily, in order to curry favor with a second generation like Fong Wumian, he didn't even have the necessary dignity. "Tell me, what's the point of roping in such a person?" "Really?" The old man was surprised. "What else? Even Lan Gumeng and Sister Shan, you can't stand Zi Chen's behavior." Xiao said, "So, you've got the wrong person this time." The old man did not refute Xiao. Instead, he nodded and said, "Perhaps this time I've really made a mistake." "Humph." Xiao snorted in dissatisfaction. The old man continued. However, he didn't misjudge Zichen. He misjudged the second young master of the Fong family. This second generation with an extremely bad reputation might not be as bad as the rumors say. "Have you gone senile? How can you say something like that?" Shijio said. "Didn't you say yesterday that you really wanted to slap to death that second generation who was running amok in the Undrunk restaurant?" The old man shook his head and said, "Do you know who Zichen met before he met Luo Tsang? That spoiled brat? This news has already spread. He recklessly went to provoke Zichen and directly lost a set of battle armor and a magic robe. This matter was discussed every day in the Sagely Mountain City. At the same time, it was one of the ironclad evidence of Fong Wulian's absurd actions. Many people who had only heard of his name but had never seen him in person could not help but praise him after seeing the scene. The rumors were indeed accurate. The old man recalled the scene and said, at that time Zichen had already defeated Sheng Luin and had 200 weapons on him. When he first met Fong Wulian, he did not put him in his eyes. When Shan Kuei made his move, Zichen had only displayed his full strength bit by bit. When Fong Wulian made his move, he had used his full strength. At that time, the defeated Fong Wulian not only did not feel afraid, but also continued to provoke Zichen, who had just spared his life. But guess what happened? Shi Jiu shook her head, indicating that she did not know. At that time, she was under Luo Tsang's control. Zichen ignored his provocation and went directly to the third floor. However, he met Luo Tsang there. At the moment Luo Tsang attacked, Zichen used his full strength. The old man said, in other words, when Luo Tsang was about to attack, Zichen had already used his full strength. It was also because of this that he was able to block Luo Tsang's powerful and murderous attack and save his life. The old man also remembered what Fong Wulian had said to Zichen. At first he thought it was a provocation, but looking at it in reverse, wasn't it also a warning? In other words, Fong Wulian's appearance was to warn Zichen to be careful. He even did not hesitate to lose his magic robe. And Zichen obviously understood, so he avoided the disaster on the third floor. If this was really the case, then it made sense that Zichen had taken the initiative to treat them today. After all, Fong Wulian had indirectly saved his life. But how could an extremely unbearable spoiled brat in the rumors have such wisdom? Fong Wulian left the undrunk restaurant and walked toward the inn where he lived. Shan Kuei followed behind Fong Wulian and was always one step behind him, listening to the conversation between the young master and Ziqin. He had a lot of doubts in his heart. Back at the inn, Shan Kuei watched as his young master greeted the girls and pinched them left and right. When they returned to their room, Shan Kuei finally couldn't help but ask, "Since you've decided, why don't everyone walk together?" Fong Wulian leaned back on the recliner and stretched comfortably. He glanced at Shan Kuei. He would not have any doubts about this loyal guard. This time, it's a matter of great importance. We absolutely can't pin our hopes on one person. Moreover, Ziqin's current troubles are not smaller than ours. If we go all the way, maybe someone will kill us as well. This time, going alone can be considered a test for him. If he can't reach Fong Lin City alive, what qualifications and strength does he have to lead me to snatch the identity of the successor? Then when do we leave? Shan Kuei asked again. Let's wait first. Find me a few more powerful existences. I'll go see them and try to win them over. I've missed too many opportunities. This is my last chance. I can't miss it. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Ziqin returned to the inn. This time, he agreed to help Fong Wulian. In addition to the attractive rewards, Ziqin also wanted to return the favor. If he had been careless last time, he would have died long ago. Maybe Lan Gumeng and Shan Yu would not have survived. This was a favor, and he had to return it. Walking into the Lan family's inn, the innkeeper told Ziqin that someone was looking for him. Ziqin found that the innkeeper's face had a difficult expression. Who's looking for me? Ziqin asked, puzzled. People from the Holy Mountain, but they've already gone to your residence. The innkeeper said embarrassedly, We tried to stop them, but we couldn't. Now that he thought about that person, the innkeeper still couldn't remember what he looked like. He clearly remembered that person. Ziqin waved his hand. Obviously, he didn't care. He always kept his valuable things with him. Opening the door, Ziqin saw an old man sitting next to him. It was the mountain lord of the Holy Talisman Mountain. Ziqin was very surprised and hurriedly bowed. Chapter 3886. The old man's arrival surprised Ziqin, but it was within reason because he had obtained many benefits on the sacred mountain. It was time for him to fulfill his responsibilities. Ziqin was already prepared, but who knew that the old man would speak at this time? Where did your unpredictability come from? Unpredictability? Ziqin was startled. An elder bestowed it upon me. The old man's expression changed. He asked again, what elder? Ziqin told the old man how he had obtained the unpredictability. After learning all this, the old man's face was clearly dejected. Did something happen? Ziqin asked. The old man shook his head. No, but we all want to know how the previous mountain lord left this world. Because we were all trapped in this world and couldn't find a way out for many years. It was a short sentence, but it contained an extremely important message. Ziqin had guessed that the missing hall master had come to this world before, but he did not expect him to be the mountain master of the Saint Talisman Mountain. The other news was even more shocking. The descenders who came here couldn't return. This world only has an entrance and no exit, or rather, we haven't found where the exit is for the time being. The old man said, We couldn't find it for a long time until I saw your unpredictability. Only then was I certain that the temple lord had left. Ziqin's expression began to change. He didn't expect that the descenders of this world would face such a situation. As for whether they will leave this world after death and return to their original world, no one knows. The old man asked Ziqin if he had any other clues. Ziqin knew nothing other than the unpredictability. The entrance was opened because of you. so maybe you have a way to leave. The old man said, "The previous mountain lord didn't leave his essence blood on the sacred mountain. Originally, with my authority, I could make an exception. But this time you climbed the 4 mountains and reached the peak one by one. You must have obtained many opportunities, so the difficulty is extremely high. However, you have other sage opportunities. If you are willing, you can take them out as compensation." Zi-Chen didn't immediately reply. Instead, he asked, "Is this very important?" The old man said, "I don't know either. Maybe the chances of leaving this way will be higher. All right then. I'll use this opportunity to enter the Saint Realm in exchange for not leaving behind any blood essence." Zi-Chen nodded. The opportunity that Oli had given him was gone, but he had gained his freedom. This was actually a good thing for Zi-Chen, because he had gained a lot of benefits from this trip to the sacred mountain. If he went to the sage domain to take the opportunity again, he might incur the wrath of the crowd. Zi-Chen was actually very happy to use this opportunity to exchange for his freedom. It was just that Oli felt a little apologetic. "What plans do you have for the future?" the mountain chieftain asked Zi-Chen. "I'll go north," Zi-Chen said. "It's a good place for you to train." The mountain master smiled. Zi-Chen asked, "May I ask, mountain chieftain, what exactly is there in the north?" The mountain master smiled and said, "There are opportunities, dangers, and heavenly souls." Zi-Chen was a little confused. "In this world, more than 90% of heavenly souls are in the north," the mountain master said. The mountain master said, "I don't know when it started, but there was a rule in this world that all heavenly souls have to go to the north." There was a look of yearning in the old man's eyes. "But I'm not sure what's there in the north. Could the passage to leave be in the north?" Zi-Chen asked. "You'll have to go and take a look. Once you find the passage, remember to come back and inform us." Zi-Chen nodded. "The road ahead is full of danger. Be careful. Take these 3 holy talismans. In times of danger, you can use them to save your life." The old man took out the 3 holy talismans. The talismans were dim, and all their power was restrained. Even Zi-Chen couldn't sense the strength of the talismans. However, the talismans given by the mountain chieftain were definitely not ordinary talismans. Zi-Chen thanked him and took them with both hands. He walked the old man out of the room. The old man rejected Zi-Chen's good intentions to walk him out. Obviously, he didn't want others to know that he had come here personally. Back in the room, Zi-Chen began to think about the next arrangements. There was a knock on the door. Lan Gumeng and Shanya were outside. After the 2 of them came in, Zi-Chen said, "You came at the right time. We have to leave." "Where to?" Lan Gumeng asked. "We'll go to Fonglin City first," Zi-Chen said. "Fonglin City? The Fong family's power?" When the 2 of them were eating with Shijio, she told them everything about the Fong family. Fonglin City was the Fong family's headquarters, so it was naturally the most important. Zi-Chen nodded and said, "I promised Fong Wulian something. We have to go there first to complete it." Shania said, "In that case, Fong Wulian's appearance back then was intentional." They had followed Zi-Chen for a long time. Of course, they believed in Zi-Chen's character. There was naturally a reason why he looked at Fong Wulian differently for no reason. But in front of Shijio, the 2 of them did not say anything. His reminder saved me, and the price he paid was not small. If it's converted into a favor, it is indeed not small. Zi-Chen said, "So this time I can't refuse his request." The 2 of them also nodded, indicating that they understood. Shanya said again, "Fong Wulian's reputation has always been bad, but he is so scheming and shrewd. Obviously, he is extremely tolerant, and his goal is definitely not small. It's better to be careful when working with such a person." Zi-Chen also considered this point, but he seemed to have vaguely guessed the reason why Fong Wulian was tolerant. Xing Luan and Yu Yi are still alive, and this time they have suffered a great loss. Naturally, they will not give up, so when we leave this time, we must be careful." Zichen did not leave immediately. Instead, he stayed in the inn for 2 more days. During these 2 days, Shijio came every day. Of course, she did not come to find Zichen. On the 3rd day, Zichen's carriage left the Sagely Mountain City. 2 hours later, the 2nd carriage also left. 6 hours later, the 3rd carriage also left. All 3 carriages had coachmen. These were the 3 carriages that Zichen had come in. The city was still bustling with noise and excitement. No one knew that the protagonist of their conversation had quietly left. However, there were many forces in the Sagely Mountain City that had been paying close attention to Zichen. After each carriage left, some people would silently follow the carriage out of the city and then follow in the direction that the carriage had gone. Chapter 3887. Although Lan Rui had left the Sagely Mountain City in advance, Zichen still had the authority to use the Lan family's intelligence channels in the city. Therefore, he was very clear about how many people had followed the 3 carriages when they left one after the other. At this moment, Zichen hadn't left yet. He was staying in the Undrunk brothel. The reason he was staying here was because Lan Gumeng and Shanya had said goodbye to Xiao. Worried that the 2 would encounter trouble and danger on the road, Xiao had suggested that they follow the Undrunk brothel's caravan. The road ahead was bound to be dangerous, so Zichen didn't have the idea of being a man and immediately agreed. Zichen's expression became unsightly when he saw the Lan family's message. He originally thought that since he had offended Yu Yi and Shanluan, these 2 factions wouldn't let him go. He didn't expect that there would be so many factions targeting him. The new ranking of the Saint Weapon Mountain's 100-weapon ranking hasn't been announced yet. It should be related to the 3 of you. According to the information we've received, the 4 Saint Soul weapons on your bodies have caused a huge commotion. Your ranking won't be low. With such treasures on your bodies, there will naturally be many people targeting you. This was what Xiao had said. She had already contacted the caravan and would set off tomorrow morning. Zichen, who was reading the report, silently read the description and didn't give any response. From Xiao's point of view, it was as if he was ignoring her. She snorted and said, "I know the Descenders are all adept at scheming and scheming. In order to prove that I don't have any bad intentions, I will join the caravan with you this time." Zichen's gaze finally moved away from the report. He looked at Xiao and asked doubtfully, "You're coming too?" "What else?" Xiao mocked. "If I don't follow you, how can I guarantee that you won't kill our Undrunk brothel's people along the way and then hide your whereabouts and disappear?" Zichen naturally didn't care about Xiao's words. She could help them at this time, which was absolutely timely. Li had also said that the Undrunk brothel's people were trustworthy. However, what puzzled him the most was that Xiao, the only successor of the unintoxicated tower, would actually follow him. Then, why would the higher-ups of the unintoxicated tower agree, other than opening a restaurant to sell drunken immortals? Undrunk Restaurant's power was outside of the sacred mountain. Perhaps their foundation was slightly weaker than the Fong clan, but their reputation was not weak at all. It was said that a huge accident had happened in the early years of the Undrunk brothel, so Shijio was the only heir left. She was definitely a treasure in the Undrunk brothel and was never shown to the public. This trip to the Holy Mountain was also Xiao's first time going out to train. She never thought that she would be targeted by someone with ulterior motives. Why did he dare to let Shijio go out this time? Furthermore, he was following them. One had to know that the reason Zichen trusted the No Drunken Tower was because of Li's words and Old Tang's opinion. But why would Buzue Lu believe them? Seeing that Zichen was in a daze and didn't say anything, Xiao said again, "What? Did I hit the nail on the head?" Zichen came back to his senses and said, "If I say thank you at this time, will you stop following us?" "Follow. You said follow you? Xiao said angrily, Zichen. You have to understand that I'm protecting you. I'm willing to lower myself to protect you. It's fine if you're not grateful, but you're actually looking down on me, right? No, absolutely not. Zichen shook his head. Of course. He couldn't admit to this kind of thing. This little girl was too much of a troublemaker. Zichen cast a glance to the side. Shanya smiled and walked closer. She pulled Xiao hand and said, Sister Xiao, do you really want to go with us? Xiao nodded and said, Sister, you're not happy? Of course I'm happy, Shanya said with a smile. She seemed to be really happy. Xiao glanced at Lan Gumeng again, and the other party also smiled and nodded. Xiao smiled sweetly and let go of Zichen. Zichen felt a headache. It seemed that this was true. But how could he be at ease with such a young lady on the road? Just as Zichen was staying in Undrunk Tavern, the forces outside the sacred mountain were already surging with undercurrents. After more than half a day, the 3 carriages were ambushed one after another. The people who attacked came quickly and retreated even faster. Naturally, they gained nothing. On the same day, Oli concealed his identity and changed his appearance to find a caravan to discuss a business deal. After staying in Undrunk Tavern for a day, Zichen and the other 3, who had also changed their appearances, came to the back door of Undrunk Tavern. After helping the caravan there unload some things, they left with the caravan. The old steward of Undrunk Tavern stood on the top floor and watched the caravan leave. He was still unwilling to look away until everyone's figures had disappeared. Is this the right thing to do? The old man sighed. This is the only way for now. Behind the old man, a man in black said, but there was a hint of helplessness in his voice. I hope everything is as Daoist Chin predicted. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Z. Chin didn't rely on magic to change his appearance, but a small pendant on his waist. Shanya, Lan Gumeng, and Jiao wore jewelry that could change their appearance. The 4 of them became ordinary and followed the caravan forward. This was a private caravan of Undrunk Tavern. They went back and forth between Undrunk Taverns to provide materials. One of the most common things was Undrunk Immortal. Whether it was the sacred mountain city or other cities, there was no way to brew Undrunk Immortal. All the Undrunk Immortal sold had to be transported through the cities controlled by Undrunk Tavern. The leader of the caravan was a strong man. It was said that he was an old man in Undrunk Tavern and was deeply trusted. He didn't speak much along the way, because he had to bring Zichen and the other 3 with him. The others in the caravan didn't know each other before. It was a team that was put together at the last minute. On the peak of the Sacred Soul Mountain, a bird landed in front of Sacred Ray. After reading the contents of the bird, his eyes instantly turned cold. Do you think you can escape by hiding in the caravan? Sacred Ray got up and walked down the Sacred Soul Mountain. He left with a murderous intent. At the same time, on the other sacred mountains, there were also people leaving one after another. These people's target was Zichen. As the person involved, Zichen didn't know how many people were coming this time. He still stayed in the caravan. They didn't encounter any danger on the way. After 3 days, the ordinary-looking Zichen slowly became familiar with the people in the caravan. After 3 days, the caravan arrived at a plain area. It was said that they would have to walk on this road for another month. There were still 3 months before Zichen's destination, Fenglin City. Chapter 3888. Saint Rao stood on the plain. Not only did he not intend to hide his whereabouts, but he also deliberately released his own aura. This was to intimidate who dared to approach the sacred mountain. Behind him stood Sheng Luin, who had been defeated by Zichen last time. He should have died, but because of the mirror spirit, he paid a price and was still alive. Behind Sheng Luin, there were more than 10 people, all of whom were filled with murderous intent. Saint Rao was the one who taught Shen Luan's fighting skills. Last time, he had taken the initiative to appear and enthusiastically meet Zichen. Of course, it was deliberate. He had left an indelible mark on Zichen's body. That was why he was unmoved when the 3 carriages left one after another yesterday. A caravan appeared in front of them. There were quite a few people, more than 100. Looking at the caravan, Saint Rao said indifferently, "Leave no one alive." Shen Luan nodded. After coming back from the dead, he naturally became a member of the sacred mountain. At this moment, he was also a member of the sacred mountain. Just as he was about to step forward, he was surprised to find that the flag of the caravan belonged to the sacred mountain. Furthermore, it was the sacred soul mountain. They were definitely on the same side. Saint Rao obviously also noticed this and was slightly taken aback. "Is there a mistake?" Shen Luan asked. However, Saint Rao's eyes quickly became cold. "Humph! Do you think you can fool me with such petty tricks? Do you think I will let you go just because you borrowed the name of the sacred soul mountain? Kill them all." Shen Luan also understood Saint Rao's meaning. He waved his hand and said, "Follow me." He led the people behind him and charged forward. The leader of the caravan in front saw people coming from afar and immediately shouted, "Be alert!" When those people approached, he was slightly stunned and shouted, "Lord Shen Luan, why are you here?" Shen Luan's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he attacked mercilessly. Looking at the earth-shattering power in front of him, the leader shouted, "Lord, we are on the same side. We are on the same side." Energy surged and drowned the leader. Saint Yuan stood at the back, his expression extremely cold. He didn't care about the beings from the Saint Soul Mountain at all, even if he knew that some of them might be his own people. But since he dared to help Zichen escape, it was a betrayal and a death wish. However, as the number of people decreased one by one, his expression changed little by little. It seemed that no one in the team could fight. Until the last person died, there was no effective obstruction. Shen Luan, who was already filled with murderous intent, looked at the sealed carriages and sneered. "You're really good at enduring. You didn't even come out." After saying that, he waved his hand again. Powerful energy surged as it whizzed forward. In an instant, it shattered those sealed carriages, causing numerous goods to scatter out from within. Shen Luan couldn't help but be stunned. There wasn't a single person here. Saint Radiance, who had been watching from the back, also noticed the abnormality and immediately flew up. He didn't see Zichen, but he saw a mark in a pile of goods. He had left it on Zichen's body. It was impossible to discover, but someone had used a special method to extract it. In an instant, his face turned pale. He had been tricked. He had killed his own people. Shen Luan and the others also guessed the result from Saint Radiance's face. For a moment, they were all stunned. "Who is it? Who is it?" Saint Radiance roared, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Don't!" Suddenly, a loud sound rang out, and the ground began to shake. "Don't! Don't!" The ground continued to shake as if a giant was walking. Saint Radiance immediately turned around, staring in the direction of the sound. A person appeared on the horizon. There was only one person. The moment he saw that person, Saint Radiance's eyes seemed to spurt fire. "Damn it, it's you!" The middle-aged man walked over and said indifferently, "It's been so many years, but your tricks haven't changed. It's time for you to improve. I let you run away in the past, but I didn't expect you to have the guts to come back. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, don't blame me for being impolite." Saint Radiance said coldly. His murderous intent began to surge. "The Saint battle technique has already failed once. Where do you get the confidence to kill me?" The newcomer stepped forward and stood 10 feet away from Saint Radiance. After hearing the words Saint battle technique, Shen Luan's expression changed. He guessed the newcomer's identity. "Humph, that's just Zichen's luck. You lost to me in the past, and now you're still no match for me. Saint Radiance stared at Oli in front of him and said indifferently, "Kill him for me!" Immediately, someone rushed toward Oli. Obviously, Saint Radiance didn't seem to be very confident. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent his subordinates to test him. A light appeared in front of Oli and turned into a blade. The blade flashed with cold light and was extremely sharp. The blade moved forward. An arc of light streaked across the sky, and the newcomer was cut in two. He didn't hold back because he was here to kill. Today was the day to settle the grudges from many years ago. In these 3 days, Zichen was able to name most of the people in this team. Among them, a swordsman called Huameng had left a deep impression on Zichen. Although Huameng was a guard, he was very talkative. Every day when they were on the road, he spent most of his time chatting with others. He had a lively personality, but he was also a good fighter. He carried a blade that had never been unsheathed on his back. He considered himself a swordsman. It was said that he was the second strongest in the team. Besides the leader, Guatao, he was the strongest. Just yesterday, he took in a new follower who admired him very much. That young man followed beside the swordsman and was at his beck and call. A thunder-like explosion suddenly came from the horizon, followed by a gust of wind and waves. In this gust of wind, there was a strong fluctuation of soul power. At the front, Guatao immediately raised his hand and signaled the team to stop. Sitting on the back of the exotic beast, Huameng narrowed his eyes and looked ahead. Someone is fighting, and it's not small. Could it be that a caravan has encountered bandits? The follower beside Huameng immediately said, "Even if there are bandits, there is no need to be afraid. With Big Brother Huameng around, all enemies can be dealt with one strike." Huameng looked around and said proudly, "That is natural. The saber on my back has been thirsty for a long time. If you are blind, come at me." The energy in front was still trembling, indicating that the battle had not ended. Guatao said, "Wait here for a moment." When Zichen sensed this energy fluctuation, his expression changed slightly. This was because there was an aura that he was familiar with. "Leader, this is not too good, right? If there are bandits attacking the caravan, we can go over now and take care of them. It is better than being attacked one by one, right?" At this moment, Huameng gave a different opinion. "Don't be careless. Let's wait here first and observe the situation," Guatao said again. Just at this moment, the trembling in front suddenly stopped. The battle should have ended. After some hesitation, Guatao signaled for everyone to continue on their way. Even though they purposely slowed down, they still saw the battlefield as they moved forward. Corpses littered the battlefield. Blood flowed, and a person stood with a saber. Chapter 3889. Seeing the corpses all over the ground, everyone's expression changed. When they looked at the person standing with the saber again, they all kept quiet out of fear. "It's someone from the sacred mountain. He even dared to kill someone from the sacred mountain." A tattered flag was waving there. The symbol of the sacred mountain was very conspicuous. The group did not dare to move forward. "Good Lord, this is a ruthless person." Luo Meng lowered his head slightly, then held onto the long saber behind him, trying not to be too conspicuous. If it were not for the subordinates beside him, he might have jumped down immediately. That was because that was a real saber wielder. The other party dared to touch someone from the sacred mountain. How could he be an ordinary person? They might even lose their lives. At this moment, he kept cursing Guatao in his heart. How good would it be if the group walked a little slower? Why do they have to walk so fast? Were they in a hurry to die? Zichen saw the person clearly, and his expression changed. Even if he tried to restrain himself, he still could not suppress the fluctuation of his emotions. That was because that saber wielder was Oli. Among the dead were Shang Luin and Shang Luo, who had schemed against him. Lan Gumeng, Shania and Jiu-Er's expressions also changed. Of course, they also knew Oli. They were very surprised to see Oli covered in blood. Fortunately, the others were also the same, so no one paid attention to them. Oli turned around and his gaze swept across everyone. At this moment his body was covered in wounds, and he looked very miserable. But compared to those who were dead, he was naturally the one who was victorious. In the end, his gaze fell on Zichen. There was no exchange of words, only a meeting of eyes. Zichen understood Li's meaning. This is my last journey to protect you. You will have to rely on yourself for the rest of the journey. Zichen did not nod. He appreciated Li's kindness. Go quickly. Guo Tao's voice sounded at this moment. After sensing that the saber wielder did not have any killing intent, he did not dare to stay any longer. The group began to take a detour. Zichen and Li's gazes met. No words were needed. As the group walked away, Li's gaze remained fixed on the group for a long time. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze and looked at the corpse on the ground. Old man, I've avenged you. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it. What's even more regretful is that I have a good successor. In the future, he is destined to make the martial arts world famous. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it. After he finished speaking, Li's figure swayed and fell backward. Why are you doing this? An old voice sounded as an old man suddenly appeared and supported Li. It was old Tang, who had not appeared for a long time. Li, whose aura was weak, glanced at old Tang and said, "How delightful. After so many years, I haven't been this happy more than a few times." Last time, Zichen had used the tremor fighting technique to win, and Zichen had obtained the strongest inheritance. Today was also the first time. This is so King satisfying. You dare to compete with me? See if I don't beat you to death. Old Tang took out a pill and snorted. You may be happy, but you almost lost your life. I'm already so old. Do you think it's easy to earn some blue crystal coins? You'll have to give me a discount for this pill. Li took the pill and swallowed it without hesitation. Then he chuckled. That won't do. My blue crystal coins are for drinking for the rest of my life. Besides, didn't you make a lot of money this time? Other than the Shan brothers who believed in Zichen and made a lot of money, old Tang, Li, and even Wu Yid had secretly bet on Zichen. Many people had made a lot of money. Seeing that Li's face was ruddy and his aura was no longer weak, old Tang said, "Looks like you won't die. Let's go." Old Tang walked forward. "Old Tang!" Li suddenly shouted. Old Tang stopped in his tracks. "I haven't been able to say thank you. This time, I'll make it up to you. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to leave the Sagely Mountain City," said Li. Old Tang turned around and looked at Li with a strange expression. He said, "Why do you sound like you're going to part with your life?" Li said, "I don't have the strength to continue on the road ahead. I'll consider it a success. But you don't die." Old Tang waved his sleeves and said, "Don't jinx it. My biggest dream is to open a noodle shop. My shop is only temporarily closed. Sooner or later, I'll return to my old business." As old Tang spoke, his body walked forward. After taking a few steps, his body disappeared. That swordsman from before has some skills. He has some of my style. After walking for a long distance, the swordsman Luo Meng, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. His follower beside him also took a deep breath and said, "That's not necessarily true. In terms of elegance, he's not as good as you, big brother Luo Meng." Guo Tao, who was walking at the front, remained silent. No one knew what he was thinking. The surrounding people also started whispering to each other. The swordsman actually dared to kill someone from the Sagely Mountain. He was definitely a daring fellow. However, he actually let them go. This still surprised them, who had just survived a disaster. Zichen's group of 4 was not in a good mood. They remained silent. Just at this moment, Luo Meng slapped his forehead and said, "Not good. It's not that swordsman is willing to let us go. Instead, he is severely injured and can no longer attack us. Right now, he has probably already fled the scene and is looking for a place to treat his injuries." The surroundings were in an uproar. Clearly, this possibility existed. "Let's continue. Don't stop." Guo suddenly said. Clearly, he was worried that Luo Meng's guess was right. If the swordsman really recovered, he might come to silence them. Although Zichen knew that such a thing would not happen, he would not purposely remind Luo Meng. He followed the others and continued moving forward at full speed. This journey took an entire day, covering a distance of several hundred kilometers. Fortunately, everyone had a good foundation. However, they also expended a lot of energy. Guo guessed that the expert would not be able to catch up, so he indicated for the group to stop and rest for now. The Luo Meng bladesman jumped off the mutated beast's back. He patted the mutated beast's head and smiled. "Little fellow, you've worked hard. I'll go get you something to eat." The Luo Meng bladesman walked into the distance. Clearly, he was going to get some food for the mutated beast. Coincidentally or not, he passed by Zichen's group of 4. Zichen's eyes flashed slightly. The scabbard on Luo Meng's back trembled slightly. Then, the saber that had never been unsheathed instantly came out of its scabbard. This was the first time the bladesman drew his saber. Suddenly, a dazzling light appeared. The saber light was not aimed at the enemy, but at Xiao Ura. Chapter 3890. No one would have thought that this relatively strong, talkative, and kind swordsman would aim his first attack at Shijiao. Shijiao couldn't react in time, and neither could Lan Gumeng and Shanya. The glint of the blade approached. The moment danger struck, a ray of light appeared on Shijiao's body, forming a defensive barrier. A mocking smile appeared at the corner of Ma Yingming's mouth. If he did not find the right target, then his attack would naturally return empty-handed. However, if his choice was correct, then this unsheathed attack would kill. With a snap, the defensive barrier on Shijiao's body shattered in an instant. The glint of the blade continued to approach Shijiao, aiming for her neck. He was going to behead her in one strike. The sudden change happened so quickly that the people around them didn't understand what was going on. They were all in a daze. Just then, a black claw mark, emitting a cold metallic luster, suddenly appeared in front of the glint of the blade. Clang! Clang! 2 clanging sounds rang out at almost the same time. The swordsman, Ma Meng, felt a strong vibration coming from the blade. His body kept retreating. However, he wasn't concerned about his attack being blocked. Instead, he was concerned about the other clanging sound. Did he fail as well? He took 5 steps back and was able to stabilize his body. But just to be safe, he took another 5 steps back. Hu Meng looked forward and saw a small black beast that wasn't very big. It was currently floating in the air in front of Xiao, whose face had turned pale. After taking a closer look at the little beast, his expression changed. As someone who had stayed in the sagely mountain city for a few months, he naturally recognized the little beast. It was Zichen's pet beast. But why was Zichen's pet here? Ma Meng's gaze continued to move. He looked behind Shijiao and saw his little brother. His little brother no longer had that look of worship and curiosity. Instead, his expression was solemn. He held a short sword in his hand, and the hand that held it was trembling. Even he, who was supposed to kill, had failed. An ordinary-looking guy with a black staff in his hand stood opposite him, or rather behind Shijiao. He remembered that the guy had introduced himself as Chen's, but of course Halcyon didn't think so. Perhaps the guy had just used an alias and used his real name. The belated Ma Meng felt a sense of regret. If he had known earlier that Zichen was also in this team, he wouldn't have acted so hastily. Right now, it was clearly impossible to kill the target in front of the other party. As soon as this thought appeared, he had the intention to retreat. It was at this moment that the other people in the surroundings reacted and retreated one after another. Horror filled their eyes. Unexpectedly, before that bladesman appeared, they started fighting among themselves. There was a flash of light in front of Zichin, and he returned to his original appearance. I wanted to go the rest of the way safely, but I didn't expect you two to expose my identity. It's definitely too late for you to retreat now. Just fight it out. Perhaps the two of you still have a chance. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Right now, there was no one who did not know of Zichin. If this person was Zichin, then the identities of the other people were almost obvious. Sure enough, Shanya and Lan Gumeng no longer hid their identities. Shijio had also returned to her original appearance, but her recognition was obviously not as good as the two girls. Halcyon and the Existence, who claimed to be his little brother, looked at each other. Knowing that there was no way out, the two decided to fight to the death. Halcyon struck out again. Saber intent lingered, and the saber light became even brighter. Yugui leapt in front of Shijio and landed on Zichen's shoulder again. Obviously, he didn't intend to continue blocking the attack for Shijio. A sword light flew out in front of Lan Gumeng and blocked the saber light. In an instant, the saber light shattered, and the sword light continued forward. This weapon, which had obviously advanced to the level of 100 soldiers, cut Halcyon's saber and pierced through Halcyon's body. It drew an arc behind him and disappeared in front of Lan Gumeng. Halcyon's forward body stopped, and his vitality began to fade. A sword strike ended the battle. On the other side, Zichan raised his staff and swung it down. A powerful wave of air surged and spread out, bringing up a lot of smoke and dust. Accompanied by a violent roar, the earth shook and a long crack appeared, sending sand and stones flying. After the strange phenomenon disappeared, the Existence who attacked Shijio was already dead. These two people's true combat strength wasn't strong. They were mainly good at assassination. At this time, everyone still stayed around and didn't dare to come forward. Shijio stood there and didn't say a word. Her original intention was to help Zichin, but she didn't expect that she would be the first to be in danger. After the two died, Zichin turned his head to look at Guatao and nodded slightly at him. Guatao immediately waved his hand, and a few people came forward to deal with the bodies. Everyone continued to rest. However, someone had just died here, so the group tacitly moved forward a few miles. During this period, no one approached Zichen's group. They were naturally worried that Zichan would misunderstand and kill them with a single strike. A few miles away, a bonfire rose. Zichen's group of 4 sat together. There was no one within 100 feet of them. "I'm sorry," said Shijio in shame. "There's no need to blame yourself. This has nothing to do with you," said Zichin. At this moment, he seemed to understand the reason why Undrunk Loft let Shijio go with them. Shanya gently patted Shijio's shoulder, indicating that she didn't need to think too much. At this moment, Guatao walked over. However, when he was dozens of feet away from Zichin, he paused slightly. After seeing Zichin nod, he continued approaching. "Is there anything I can help you with?" Guatao sat beside Zichin. Zichin shook his head and said, "You have to be careful. There should be a lot of danger ahead. Try your best to protect your people. Or you can take your people and leave in advance." "I promised the customer that I would send you safely to the place," said Guatao. "There's no need for that. In fact, it's also a good thing that you take your people and leave first. No one should attack you again. Besides, I don't really trust the people in the group now. After all, if there's an assassination once, there will be a second time." Zichen's concerns existed, but Guatao's persistence was beyond imagination. "I will let my people stay 100 feet away from you and not disturb you." Zichin didn't say anything else. He respected Guatao's choice. After resting for a night, the group continued on their way. Everyone was no longer so worried about the swordsman who dared to kill the people of the sacred mountain. This was because Zi was in the group. He had hundreds of soldiers with him and was an existence that could suppress Shan Luan. However, because they were too nervous before, they didn't notice that Shan Luan, who had been defeated by Zi, had fallen into a pool of blood again. This time, after leaving the sacred mountain, without the protection of the mirror spirit, he couldn't be more dead. On Zi's way, Yu Yi had been waiting for a long time. He obviously wasn't impulsive. Instead, he was fully prepared. Chapter 3891. There were many people who wanted to kill Zi, and Yu Yi was one of them with a strong desire to kill. This time he came to the road ahead early in the morning, and his target was Zi. He waited for half a month. As for the earth soul beside him, he had enough patience to wait. This was because Zi had something he needed, or rather, something he coveted. Could it be that someone else beat us to it? Besides Yu Yi, there was another young man who also had a strong desire to kill Zi, and that was Qin Kai, who was not qualified to stay in the sacred mountain. This time, he and Yu Yi chose to cooperate. The latest news is that Zi is walking in this direction, and we will be the first to meet him. Yu Yi said confidently, with cold killing intent in his eyes. In the vision of the two, a group of people appeared. The group had close to 100 people, and after seeing the people blocking the road ahead, they stopped. During this time, for people did not stop and continued to move forward. Yu Yi saw the people coming, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. They were finally here. The others also became alert, and light circulated around their bodies. Yu Yi turned around and saw that the old man behind her had disappeared into thin air. Qin Kai smiled proudly. They're really here. This time we're going to be rich. He seemed to see the scene of Zi's death. Behind him, another old man disappeared into thin air. Zi and the other three did not stop walking, even though they had already seen Yu Yi. After deciding not to hide his identity anymore, Zi had the idea of killing his way out of this mess. Zi, you're really brave. A sneer sounded. It was Yu Yi. You're still alive, which surprised me. Zi said lightly. As long as my life spirit shield is not destroyed, I'm immortal. Yu Yi looked at Zi and said, I have to thank you for helping me baptize my life spirit shield, and I heard that it's ranked very high. Zi's hand flashed, and the life spirit shield appeared, shining brightly. Are you sure it's still yours? It's my natal item. As long as it's not broken, it's mine. Yu Yi smiled complacently and said, Shield come. In Zi's hand, the light of the spirit shield was still blooming, but there was no abnormality. Zi looked at Yu Yi, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. Shield come. Yu Yi's expression changed, and she shouted once more. A strange energy came from the front, like a ripple of vibration. Zi held the light shield in his hand and stood there motionless. When the ripple came into contact with Zi and the light shield, it disappeared. During this time, the light shield did not react. Shield come. Shield me. Shield return. Shield come. Yu Yi was unwilling to give up and shouted a few more times. Every time, a strange phenomenon appeared, but the light shield still did not have any reaction. Old Tang was Zi's guardian, and his realm was extremely high. After obtaining the spirit shield, Zi naturally had to let him check it, especially after knowing that Yu Yi was still alive. At first, Old Tang also had this concern. After all, Yu Yi had grown with this shield for many years. But after Old Tang carefully checked it, he unexpectedly found that the light shield had completely recognized him as its master, and there were no hidden dangers. As for why this was so, even Old Tang could not explain it clearly. So when he saw Yu Yi again today, Zi could calmly take out the shield. Even if Yu Yi shouted herself hoarse, the result would not change. Looking at the anxious Yu Yi, who was sweating profusely, Zi once again laughed sarcastically. But at this time his expression suddenly changed. He raised the spirit shield in his hand, and countless rays of light blossomed from the spirit shield. A bony palm print suddenly appeared in the air, and like a ghost claw, it went straight for Zi-Chen's head. Boom! A dull vibration sounded, and a powerful fluctuation spread out. Zi-Chen, who was holding the shield, felt his arm sink as a huge force came through the light shield. He was pushed back by the huge force. Shanya and the other two also retreated. After the ghost claw, an old man walked out of the air. There was no powerful aura around him, but he gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. The old man looked at Zi-Chen in front of him and said indifferently, "If it wasn't for this shield, this old man could kill you in one move." "Behind the light shield," Zi-Chen replied, "if we were in the same realm, I would be able to beat 100 of you." In the previous attack, Zi-Chen had clearly sensed that the opponent's realm was the Earth Soul realm, and the fact that the opponent could approach him was enough to prove that he was fully prepared. Sure enough, Old Tang, who had been tailing them, appeared behind them. But there was also another person in front of Old Tang. Since the other party dared to block Old Tang, they were naturally also in the Earth Soul realm. The other party stopped Old Tang and said, "Why don't we wait and watch the show first?" Old Tang said calmly, "It's not easy to reach this step. Why do you want to seek death?" The other party said, "We're both in the Earth Soul realm, and there's not much difference between us. It's hard for me to kill you, but it's also not that easy for you to kill me. However, I'm not here to fight to the death with you today. I just need to delay you for a moment." A moment was enough for an Earth Soul realm expert to kill a human soul realm expert. This was an indisputable fact. Just as the Earth Soul realm expert finished speaking, Zi-Chen's opponent, the skinny old man, made his move. While suppressing his realm, he also chose to take the initiative to attack. Behind him, Yu Yi and Chen Kai didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this, because Zi-Chen's current battle strength could no longer be measured by the human soul realm. Experts of the same realm couldn't even last 2 moves in front of him. The advantage of numbers was useless. This was something that those who were qualified to join the Sacred Mountain had already proven countless times for them. Only by suppressing his realm could he truly kill his opponent. Just as the Earth Soul realm expert made his move, Zi-Chen also moved. He held a shield in his left hand, and a mysterious object appeared in his right hand. This was the first time Zi-Chen took out the sacred talisman brush to defend against an enemy after it was completed. The tip of the brush blossomed with light, and as Zi-Chen's brush landed, his soul power left a mark in the sky. The soul power between heaven and earth was like boiling water, crazily gathering at the place where Zi-Chen's brush landed. The scarlet winged tiger. An earth-shaking tiger roar resounded, shaking the surroundings. A winged tiger as large as a mountain appeared out of thin air, charging straight for the Earth Soul realm expert. With the mysterious object, Zi-Chen's brush moved even faster, and the winged tiger's aura became even more tyrannical. This winged tiger was enough to sweep away most of the human soul realm experts in the world. But in front of an Earth Soul realm expert, it wasn't enough. The skinny palm fell from the sky, and the world instantly darkened, as if dark clouds were covering the sky. The huge palm print instantly drowned the winged tiger. With a loud bang, the scarlet winged tiger's body exploded. After Zi-Chen finished his brush, he didn't stop. He, who was fighting an Earth Soul realm expert, naturally didn't dare to be careless. The sacred talisman brush in his hand fell again, and thunder rumbled in the sky as a long-horned serpent appeared. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.